Chapter 672. Even if they were insulted like a dog, they still didn't dare to yell back. They just glared at this group of young men fixedly. Even if they were flushed with anger, they didn't dare to retort. They were all individual cultivators. Aside from a small number of individual cultivators who had exceptional talents and complete mentorship in the cultivation world, the majority of individual cultivators were at the bottom of the cultivation world, having no remarkable status. The group of young men in front of them, who were major sect disciples, was exactly the opposite of them innately. It was as if a group of poor losers who encountered a group of rich and dashing men. Even if the rich and dashing men did nothing, they could still overthrow those poor losers. The reality was very cruel indeed. Don't these people look like crazy dogs who are very mad? The fatty said with a laugh. The young men beside him laughed out loud, seemingly to echo what the fatty said. The person he was speaking to was a man in his 20s with sword-like eyebrows and sparkly eyes, who was dressed in a Chinese robe. He was very handsome and had an extraordinary manner. The fatty's words made him frown slightly and said, "Brother Zhou, these words are a little out of line." The fatty's original proud face suddenly stiffened, as if he didn't expect Brother Wang would say this to him because of the individual cultivators that were like weeds and not worth mentioning in his eyes. There was a flash of resentment and hatred in his eyes suddenly. Although it was just a flash, Yi Shiwen frowned lightly after noticing it. It was true that individual cultivators had very low status in the cultivation world, but to poke fun at these people for entertainment was of no higher upbringing. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I am Wang Hongchong of Medicine King Valley. I am here to escort you into the valley," the brother Wang said to everyone with his arched hands. He had a graceful demeanor and excellent posture. Compared to the fatty, it was a world of difference. He made people comfortable and exuded good vibes instantly. Many individual cultivators cursed secretly in their hearts. They are both disciples of major sections. Why is there such a huge difference? It is really like a human and a beast. The fatty humiliated them and scrupulously. They were not good-tempered people as well. Although they dared not defame them, they already cursed in their hearts. "Brother Wang, what is there to say about these people? If it weren't for the seniors who showed mercy, these people would not even qualify to sit in and listen from afar. They should be deeply grateful for such an opportunity," said the fatty scornfully. His eyes were full of disdain. He had too many reasons to look down at these people. He was far better than these people in terms of mentorship, cultivation, or other aspects. Just like the rich and dashing guys, he could defeat the poor dwarf without even lifting a finger. His cultivation had already reached Sage Realm Minor Mastery long ago. Facing these semi-sage individual cultivators, he naturally felt superior. Even though these semi-sage individual cultivators already belonged to a very successful group in individual cultivation, it was nothing at all to him. "Even if we don't have a mentorship and our cultivation is far worse than yours, we still have one thing called dignity. Motherf asterisk Kerr, isn't it just a conference? I quit. I'm not going to listen to it, okay? We still need to be insulted like a dog by this dead fat pig just to listen to this conference from afar. I'm not happy. Is this the sincerity of Medicine King Valley to invite all the cultivators? I don't think so. Even such people are worthy of an honor seat, but we can only listen as observers. So it can be seen that Medicine King Valley is just the same." Finally, someone could not take it anymore and scolded. It was Yang Tingyu beside Yi Shiwen who couldn't tolerate it anymore. He was the youngest among the crowd. He looked like he was middle-aged, but in fact, he was not the oldest among these people, and his cultivation just reached semi-sage initial. He had the least experience since he was the youngest. That was why he had some protrusions, one that were not found in other individual cultivators. They were individual cultivators, but who wanted to be at the state of remaining at the bottom, who never thought of leaping their cultivation to the top one day. It was just that these protrusions had been defeated little by little over time and vanished. At this time, it suddenly appeared again because of the fat young man's insult. Hearing his remark, the other individual cultivators' faces suddenly showed commending expressions and was indignant. They shared his grief and distress. Although this person was scolding, he was actually voicing out the thoughts in their hearts. Didn't they think so too? Why could this kind of person sit in the honor's seat? But they could only listen from afar? Wasn't it just because they were born in a good family? They all submitted it too, but even if this was the case, they should not insult others. It was already a personal humiliation to describe them as dogs. Yi Shiwen was also slightly surprised while looking at Yang Tingyu next to him. He did not expect that Yang Tingyu dared to speak out for justice this time. Previously, he looked extremely cautious, as if his protrusion had been grinded off. He did not expect that hot blood was still flowing in his heart at this time. He was not optimistic about these individual cultivators, not because of mentorship or talents. What was important was a brave and fearless heart to move forward, and it was absent in these people. Talents were crucial in cultivation, but the more important thing was the mind. Only with a persistent heart that never gave up on martial arts could one carry on till the end. These individual cultivators' protrusions had already been grinded smooth. They only knew to tolerate whatever they could. In order to obtain opportunities and resources, they did not hesitate to sacrifice their dignity. But they did not know that this was ruining their possible future development. He just didn't expect Yang Tingyu still had some protrusions and hot blood at this time, which was somewhat surprising. Please do not misunderstand. We at Medicine King Valley are absolutely sincere in inviting everyone to come here. Wang Hongchong saw everyone fuming, and his expression changed suddenly. Hatred surged through his heart all of a sudden. He hated the fatty for talking indiscreetly. If these news were spread out, then Medicine King Valley's reputation would be ruined. One individual cultivator was nothing at all for Medicine King Valley, and it was not necessary to focus on it. However, it would be different in terms of the entire individual cultivators network, as there were relatively few masters in individual cultivation. But it was only lesser, not that there were no masters. There were still a few masters in individual cultivation who were renowned throughout the world, and most importantly, Medicine King Valley needed to rely on these individual cultivators in many aspects. One such was the collection of some medicinal materials, which were acquired from these individual cultivators to a large extent. If the news spread it out and enraged these individual cultivators, their collective resistance to the Medicine King Valley would definitely have a huge impact on the Medicine King Valley. This time, Medicine King Valley invited these individual cultivators to participate because they wanted to foster a good relationship. It was just letting them to listen anyway. It was nothing for Medicine King Valley. Although they didn't necessarily have to please these individual cultivators, they couldn't offend these individual cultivators either. That was only what a fool would do. But because of this fatty's few words of ridicule, he triggered a deadly bomb that attracted everyone's hatred instantly. Although it was the fatty talking, the Medicine King Valley was unjustly implicated while just being present. They were hated for no reasons. You have the sincerity? Is this your sincerity? Even if no one escorts us to the valley, and we are not qualified to sit in the honor seat, you allowed this person to insult us here? Although we are less capable and are not legatee, we are not to be shamed by anyone. Yang Tingyu said with a sneer. After he finished talking, he turned around and left, ignoring the crowd. It was evident that he was exasperated. For individual cultivators, especially for alchemy warriors, their cultivation was not mainstream in the starry sky. So it was extraordinarily difficult for those who did not have the mentorship to cultivate. This opportunity was very rare, but he was ready to give up. Between dignity and prospects, he chose dignity. Dignity? Arrogance? Those are just like a pig or a dog. How dare you mention this in front of me? The fatty retorted abruptly, and his eyes were splashed with murderous intent. He hated it when other people talked about his body shape. Initially, he wanted to reshape his body and become perfect after his cultivation reached the sage realm, but he had not been able to reduce his body weight. So this subject was a taboo for him to talk about. Yang Tingyu even dared to call himself a dead fat pig just now. It really poked his trigger button. Want to leave? Come here. Sudden changes occurred unexpectedly. The fatty suddenly transformed a giant hand towards Yang Tingyu and suppressed him down. This giant hand, which was massive, pressed down the space directly. He wanted to press these people to death. He was already clouded with anger. He did not differentiate that it was Yang Tingyu who said it, and it had nothing to do with other people. In his heart, these people were like pigs and dogs who wouldn't matter if they died. They were on Yang Tingyi's side. When Yang Tingyu spoke just now, their faces even showed agreement, as if they were ridiculing his body shape. They were all just as bad as the rest, and all of them should be killed. He simply regarded these people as weeds who were not worth mentioning. Abrupt changes occurred suddenly, and everyone didn't expect that this fatty dared to attack without any warning in the Medicine King Valley. Even Yang Tingyu, who was just firm and emotional, did not expect that Fatty would make a move with the intention to kill all of a sudden. The crowd wanted to escape at this time, but they were just semi-sage. How could they go against this fatty opponent of Sage Realm? Before they could react in time, the giant hand already appeared in front of them, preparing to press them to death. Just as they were desperate, a golden light burst from the sky, as if it were shining from the borderless deity's world. A thin and fair finger pierced through the golden light, poking at the giant hand directly with overwhelming momentum and irresistible force. A metaphor commonly used in Chinese context. It meant the bravery of a person to fight. Chapter 673. Boom! The entire sky was shaking furiously, and the extremely horrifying gasified giant hand just now exploded on the spot. The fatty's horrified shriek echoed, and blood was flowing across his entire arm. He was sprawling weakly and crippled. Everything happened too quickly. No one had enough time to see or comprehend clearly what was happening. Originally, the fatty was unleashing his invincible prowess, and those individual cultivators were all under his prowess, shivering in fear. But in a flash, that fatty's entire arm was crippled. Everyone looked towards a person dressed in a green robe, standing majestically in the middle of many individual cultivators. Yi Shiwen frowned while looking at the fatty. His facial expression was indifferent without any sympathy. This fatty made him quite disgusted. He had seen many overbearing and arrogant people, but none of them were like this fatty. Their arrogance was due to their indifference and disregard of others. They never deem other people as of value, but they wouldn't degrade other people for fun. This was what made him feel very disgusted. "You're just like a crazy dog, biting people everywhere," Yi Shiwen said calmly with a cold expression. Everyone was stunned on the spot. They did not expect Yi Shiwen to say such words. Indifferent. Yes, he was indifferent, as if the fatty was worth nothing. This was a more brutal pain than disdain. Even if it was disdain, it still meant that you were worth mentioning. But indifference meant you were nothing at all, just like humans facing ants. There was no reaction even when you stepped on it. This was the feeling. This sentence immediately made those individual cultivators feel very pleased. No one wanted to be called a crazy dog. If it was not due to their background and strength being too far inferior, they wanted to swear long ago. Compared with them, the fatty who blocked here for no reason was more like a crazy dog. A crazy dog barking. Meanwhile, those young masters who came with this fatty felt as if they were slapped on their faces fiercely, hitting them to the point of dizziness. There were mixed feelings of shame and anger in their hearts. These people also contributed in laughing at these individual cultivators just now. Although Yi Zaiwen's words were directed at the fatty, they felt like they were slapped as well. The fatty looked at Yi Shiwen with bitter resentment, as if Yi Shiwen had committed some crime. He also couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen was able to explode his giant hand with a single finger. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen was just a semi-sage like those individual cultivators, and those who were below Sage Realm were just ants. But now this ant actually crippled one of his arms. "How dare you hurt me, you individual cultivator? You are in trouble. You are in deep trouble." The fatty yelled at Yi Shiwen with a grudge on his face, like a beaten child who was yelling. From the perspectives of major sect disciples, if individual cultivators had offended them, they would be doomed. They would be in trouble. A very deep trouble. Yi Shiwen chuckled. A calm smile appeared on his face, and there was a sound of a loud slap approaching right after that. Then the fatty was slapped away directly. His plump body spun in the air like a top in the air before hitting hard on the ground. "How'd you like to see what trouble have I got into?" Yi Shiwen took a step forward and charged to the fatty's side instantly. He sneered while looking at the fatty and said, I would like to see which sect taught such an arrogant and ignorant disciple like you. Yi Zaiwen's facial expression was slightly cold. The original intent of practicing martial arts is to take charge of our fate and improve ourselves. But you use it to bully the weak for fun. It's best to just abolish it, said Yi Shiwen with a sneer. Yi Shiwen certainly was not a person with a chivalry spirit who took pleasure in helping others. There were a lot of weak people who died in his hands too. But Yi Shiwen looked down at those who bullied the weak for fun. Yi Shiwen even felt that the fatty was not worthy of practicing martial arts at all. Seeing Yi Shiwen raising his hand, Wang Hongchang said quickly, "Senior, please be merciful." Although Yi Shiwen looked young, the cultivation world did not distinguish people's age by their looks. Besides, the most important thing was that everything was false in this society that applied the law of the jungle, and only tyrannical strength was the real thing. Although he was annoyed by the trouble that the fatty caused him, he also had to admit that the fatty's strength was not inferior to him. Yet, he was sent flying with a slap now. It was conceivable that the strength of the green-robed young man in front of him was probably comparable to the seniors in his sections. Although the Medicine King Valley had a great scale, it was just an ordinary sect. It was a far cry from giant aces of the true martial school. Even if Wang Hongchang was the true legatee disciple of the sect, he was only in sage realm. As for great sage, he must be a first-class figure like the Supreme Elder, and his foundation was at most comparable to the top 100 legatee in true martial school. It was a completely different class. He didn't know why there was such a tyrannical master in individual cultivation. Although he hated the fatty, he had no choice but to protect the fatty. Yi Shiwen didn't even look up and stamped on the fatty while his expression was unusually cold. Following this fatty's scream, his diaphragm was instantly broken by Yi Zaiwen's trample. Before he even had the time to react, Yi Shiwen had already trampled his diaphragm. One broken. What level of cultivation Yi Shiwen was in now? He attacked with all his strength, leaving the fatty's diaphragm completely crushed without the possibility of recovery. It was like turning the original green, grassy land into a desert. It was impossible to grow any plants. You actually abolished my martial arts? The fatty's resentful eyes looked at Yi Shiwen with disbelief. This individual cultivator is simply too outrageous. Doesn't he know that this might bring him a huge trouble? In the cultivation world, those disciples with sects were often unscrupulous because there was a tyrannical sect behind them. Once something happened, the sect's seniors would immediately seek serious revenge. Although the fatty was very powerful, the sect behind him was even more tyrannical. How could a single person's strength be compared with a huge sect? It was precisely because of the sect behind him that the fatty would recklessly look down at those individual cultivators who did not have such a strong background. Wang Hongchang looked at Yi Shiwen awkwardly. He did not expect that Yi Shiwen would eventually make the fatal move. Yi Shiwen actually made a merciless move once he attacked. Without giving the fatty any chance to say anything, Yi Shiwen directly abolished his martial arts. Having such people like you practicing martial arts is simply the shame of my generation, Yi Shiwen said lightly, but he was straightforward and had no hint of fear between his lines. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was so cruel and decisive, those sect disciples who were initially arrogant turned into birds and flew away suddenly. They did not dare to stay in front of Yi Shiwen, who seemed like a mega monster in their eyes. If they were slightly careless, they might be killed by this guy who looked moody and brutal. If they ended up the same as that fatty, then it would be miserable. For these people, all their arrogance was based on their own strength. If their martial arts were abolished, it would be more suffering than killing them. Even Wang Hongchang turned and flew away into the Medicine King Valley hurriedly. He was not fleeing like those people, because he could see that although Yi Shiwen had been merciless and decisive while attacking, Yi Shiwen would not willfully murder the innocent. But since such a major incident had happened, he had no choice but to go back and report to the sect's senior officials and let them decide. In short, the incident would not be as simple this time. In the blink of an eye, these sect disciples vanished immediately, and the remaining were all individual cultivators now. At this moment, their glance towards Yi Shiwen had changed, and the casualness just now was gone. Before Yi Shiwen showed their strength, they could still consider Yi Shiwen as an ordinary individual cultivator. However, Yi Shiwen had now shown the strength that was like an elderly predecessor among the individual cultivators. So they couldn't help being careful. Yi Shiwen took these changes to heart, but didn't speak. Senior Long, thank you for your help this time. Yang is deeply grateful. If you need to assign me to anything in the future, please don't hesitate to say it. Yang Tingyu came forward confidently and said, perhaps because he had risked it all just now, so this seemed nothing now. People must experience ups and downs before they can make a big breakthrough in their state of mind. After experiencing the incident just now, Yang Tingyu almost died. The meticulous care he had practiced for hundreds of years seemed to be wiped out suddenly. It was like what the world said. Once a person had sudden enlightenment, he could thoroughly understand many things instantly. It's nothing. It's no trouble at all, said Yi Shiwen with a grin. He didn't even care about the sect behind the fatty. He could even escape if a great sage attacked. When Soul Destruction Temple's temple master chased him previously, he managed to escape too. He was now stronger than he was at the beginning. Would it be possible that the sect behind this fatty is stronger than the Soul Destruction Temple? Hesitating again, Yang Tingyu said, Senior, this person the disciple of Thousand Plants sect. Thousand Plants sect's influence in the nearby star region has grown rapidly. I heard that they're related to Meteor sect too. It may be a big trouble if they were to look into this. Why don't Senior? Yang Tingyi's intention was very clear to let Yi Shiwen leave. Thousand Plants sect alone was a strong force. Coupled with the inextricable relationship with the Meteor sect, they were definitely not to be messed with. The highest ruler of the star region nearby was the Meteor sect. No one had a good life after offending the Meteor sect, especially individual cultivators like them who were not liked and valued by anyone. Yi Shiwen just smiled and said, It's all right. This is a rare gathering. Any one of you wants to go in with me? When it referred to Dantian where Qi resides. It's also a common term in Eastern fantasy and martial arts novels. Chapter 674. It's all right. This is a rare gathering. Anyone wants to go in with me? Yi Zaiwen's eyes glanced at these individual cultivators. Although it was Yi Shiwen who rescued them just now, they were all dodging eye contacts at this time when facing Yi Zaiwen's eyes. They did not dare to enter with Yi Shiwen. Everyone knew that Yi Shiwen abolished the martial art of Thousand Plants sect's true legatee disciple. It was a great offense for Thousand Plants sect. How could Thousand Plants sect not retaliate? In the eyes of Yi Shiwen, Thousand Plants sect scale was the most comparable to the last few ranks of the top 100 legatee of true martial school. But in the hearts of these individual cultivators, it was already gigantic. Thousand Plants sect's thunderous revenge was about to come. Wouldn't entering with Yi Shiwen now be equivalent to admitting that they were on Yi Zaiwen's side? They would be avenged as well at that time. So they didn't want to take the risk. Just when Yi Shiwen was about to go in by himself, he saw Yang Tingyu gritted his teeth and came forward while saying, Senior, let me enter with you. After witnessing Yi Zaiwen's strength, Yang Tingyu changed Yi Zaiwen's title from Brother Long to Senior. He didn't know that Yi Shiwen was not as old as him, but even if he knew it, it was okay. In the cultivation world, the most important thing was strength. As long as one had strength, his age or seniority was not important. Yi Shiwen looked at Yang Tingyu surprisingly. He didn't expect someone dared to follow him at this time. He was confident enough to protect himself, but this was not the case, at least in the eyes of others. Yi Shiwen was an individual cultivator from the outer region. He would not be able to compete against Thousand Plant sect even if he was powerful. The concept of individual cultivators being no match against sects was deeply rooted. Even if those individual cultivators in the elderly predecessor level of cultivation had scruples on the sects, it was still only scruples. They dared not provoke the sects if it wasn't anything crucial. Following Yi Shiwen to go in at this time had a feeling of bearing life and death together. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was surprised as he did not expect it. Come in with me then, Yi Shiwen said to Yang Tingyu. As for other individual cultivators, he didn't look at them again. From his point of view, this was the so-called opportunity. If they missed it, it would not come again. Opportunity could either be existing or not. Those who could really understand thoroughly and had the guts would have the opportunity to obtain it. Yi Shiwen had encountered miraculous opportunities countless times, but it was also obtained every time he risked his life. Never once it was easy. Without courage, one's journey was destined to be limited in the martial world. Seeing Yi Shiwen being so determined, Yang Tingyu was somewhat relieved. Anyway, Yi Shiwen did not seem to be the kind of lunatic who purposely courts death. Yi Shiwen must have something to rely on. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen saved his life. He would just bet on this once. The two walked all the way into the Medicine King Valley. Originally, this road was clouded by the fog, but now the mountain gate was wide open to enable those individual cultivators to come in. But from time to time, Yi Shiwen could still see glimpses of spiritual senses scanning around him occasionally. There were some disciples of Sage Realm who were on the lookout. At this time, Yi Shiwen and Yang Tingyu were surrounded with a lot of individual cultivators, but they were not the previous group. There were many roads to enter the valley, and they all came from other paths without experiencing the incident just now. A lot of individual cultivators heard that there would be a lot of masters who would come to discuss the truth, so they came from far and near. The masters of Feihong Mansion has arrived. At this time, Yi Shiwen heard a lot of exclaims from the individual cultivators around him. Among the vast star region near Meteor World and Meteor World, the Meteor sect was naturally the leader. But besides the Meteor sect, there were still some sects which were fairly powerful, and some had great sage presiding. The Meteor sect disciples were the same as the people above the celestial from the individual cultivator's perspective. Even these sects were huge for them. In terms of scale, Feihong Mansion was even larger than that of Medicine King Valley. The people had a whole new level of respect for them. Isn't that Guan Rue, one of the top 10 true legatee disciples of Feihong Mansion? He can be ranked as the top 3 among the younger generation disciples of the Feihong Mansion. Although Feihong Mansion is not an alchemy cultivating sect, Guan Rue is the legatee of alchemy cultivation. Guan Rue is really exceptionally remarkable to stand out among them and rank among the top 10 true legatee disciples. Now he is in Sage Realm, great perfection. There is hope for him to be a great sage in the future. But look at the old man before Guan Rue. Is he one of the supreme elders of Feihong Mansion and Guan Rui's master, Tian Butong? Everyone looked at them and saw a group of people stepping on the light approaching. The first person was an old man with white hair and youthful face. He had a fair face and his eyes were shining. His vital energy and blood was very vigorous. Everywhere he looked was like shone by candlelight. Others couldn't see it, but Yi Shiwen noticed it. This was the sign of a great sage. Only a true great sage could have such vibe. Although Yi Ziwen's current cultivation was enough to defend against a great sage, he couldn't exhibit the same signs. Moreover, Tian Butong's cultivation had entered the peak of the great sage intermediate and might leap and attain great sage late any time. Behind him was a young man in purple clothes. He had extraordinary demeanor and was super handsome. Obviously, he was the Guan Rue that the people were talking about. In Yi Ziwen's eyes, Guan Rui's cultivation was already in Sage Realm great perfection. It probably wouldn't take long before he could step into half-step great sage. Gosh, even Tian Butong came this time? I originally thought that it would be good enough for them to send an elder in Sage Realm casually, but I didn't expect that Tian Butong would lead the team personally. We are really blessed this time. Since Feihong Mansion is already led by a great sage, then the others, Thousand Plants Sect and Medicine King Valley, will not be weaker than this formation. They come together to discuss the truth. Even if we are just fortunate enough to hear 1 or 2 sentences, it will be extremely useful for us. After everyone saw Tian Butong, they were extremely excited. For these semi-sage and a handful of Sage Realm individual cultivators, a great sage like Tian Butong was just like a celestial deity. They were simply legendary characters who were generally impossible to meet. Even Yang Tingyu, who was next to Yi Shiwen, had a blush face after seeing this Tian Butong. Tian Butong was well known among the individual cultivators in the star region. His existence was like deities and immortals. For a warrior who cultivated alchemy like Yang Tingyu, the significance was even more extraordinary. Yuan naturally didn't understand. To him, he was nothing but a great sage. There was nothing special. This is a worthwhile trip as I can see Tian Budong and Guan Rui this time. Yeah, meeting in person is much better than just hearing such a famous name, especially Guan Rui. His cultivation is less than 300 years, but he has reached the level of sage realm great perfection. We may not have this opportunity in this life, but every one of them enjoyed exceptional advantages. Hey, comparisons are odious indeed. The surrounding individual cultivators let out a big sigh. Compared with these sect disciples, they were unremarkable like weeds on the roadside. Not everyone had the same fate indeed, but they were just lamenting for a while, because the masters of Feihong Mansion had already entered the Medicine King Valley by stepping on the light. They could fly in, but these individual cultivators still had to go in by walking. Everyone entered the Medicine King Valley, and the whole valley was extremely huge. Not sure how many miles was the circumference. Everyone was at the plaza after entering the Medicine King Valley. On a typical day, this huge plaza had a misty appearance covered by endless spiritual energy. Countless Medicine King Valley disciples would sit with both legs crossed and cultivate here. Of course, they were all junior disciples. Prominent disciples would have their own cave, dwelling, and rest area where spiritual energy was more abundant. But at this time, in order to entertain disciples and incoming guests, they were temporarily vacated. Upon entering this place, plenty of individual cultivators quickly used their martial arts to absorb the spiritual energy here. Normally, it would be hard for them to find places with such abundant spiritual energy. Once these places were found, they were definitely occupied by great forces. Some mocking laughs of Medicine King Valley disciple resounded from the surrounding. They seemed to be laughing at these individual cultivators for being inexperienced, and some individual cultivators were flushed with shame following the mocking laughter. However, few people stopped because of it. For them, cultivating for an hour here was almost equal to their usual agonizing cultivation for a whole day. They thought in their hearts, no wonder these major sects' disciples' cultivation advances by leaps and bounds. This basic condition was not what they could enjoy. Of course, there were wealthy people amongst the individual cultivators. There were always people who had all kinds of miraculous opportunities that made them very wealthy. In fact, they were many times richer than ordinary sect disciples. This scene reminded Yi Shiwen of the time when they first went to the Yuan sect headquarters. It was a similar dumbfounded expression. It was also exactly the same. Thinking about the past, Yi Shiwen couldn't help but grin and chuckled lightly. He felt that many eyes were fixated on him, especially those of individual cultivators' gaze. It was as if they were looking at an alien. Yi Shiwen was like a giant among the dwarfs in this group of individual cultivators. He did not have the slight inferior feeling like these individual cultivators. He was proudly independent. Yang Tingyu beside him was much more outstanding than others too. It seemed like he was afraid of embarrassing Yi Shiwen, so he tried to maintain his grace. Even many of the Medicine King Valley disciples looked at Yi Shiwen in surprise. Although they were not as bad as the fatty named Zhou before, they somehow despised those individual cultivators as well. However, they were somewhat impressed by Yi Ziwen's demeanor. Chapter 675. Master, it is him. He is the one who abolished Brother Zhou's martial arts. Master, you have to seek revenge for Brother Zhou. A resentful voice echoed from the fog all of a sudden. A group of people was seen to appear suddenly from the dense fog formed by numerous spiritual energies. It was a large team consisting of dozens of people, which was not worse off than the previous Feihong mansion. The black-shirted old man who headed the team had a thin body, and he looked slightly angry. He walked with majestic steps without concealing his aura at all, like a violent hurricane. He turned out to be a great sage whose strength was not inferior to the previous Tian Budong. However, his vital energy and blood was less vigorous than Tian Budong. In Yi Ziwen's view, the frail old man had a hint of decaying aura within him. Yes, a stream of well-hidden, decaying aura. This was the aura of a person on the verge of death. Yi Shiwen was confident that he wouldn't read it wrongly. Unlike ordinary people who grew old slowly, warriors could always maintain their optimal and most vigorous state because of their cultivation. But that was only during the Golden Age. Once a warrior entered the last period of his life, he would begin to fall into the angel decay, one state suddenly. His body would also reveal a decaying aura. According to EMO, everyone had to go through this process unless they reached the longevity realm. Obviously, the old man in front of him had entered the angel decay state. This meant that he would die soon. Although this soon might mean 10+ years, or even decades, he was indeed entering the end phase for a great sage with a long life. He was indeed entering the end phase. Behind him were dozens of disciples, and among them were those disciples that were scared away by Yi Shiwen just now. Judging from their dressing, they were obviously the disciples of Thousand Plants sect. When that group rushed out, it attracted the attention of many warriors around. Aren't those people from Thousand Plants sect? Didn't they enter the inner Medicine King Valley already previously? Why did they come out at this time? What's happening? Many people didn't know why the people of Thousand Plants sect stormed out aggressively, but they still made way for the group of people in order to avoid being mistakenly injured by these seemingly mad Thousand Plants sect disciples. Is that black-shirt elderly man the supreme elder of Thousand Plants sect, Gonyang Yongfeng? This time, the leader of Thousand Plants sect is Gonyang Yongfeng indeed. Rumor has it that the pellet to break through the Great Sage level by Medicine King Valley has shocked even the top people of Thousand Plants sect. Although Thousand Plants sect is incompatible with Medicine King Valley most of the time, they attach great importance to this issue. Yeah, this is the first time Gonyang Yongfeng stepped out of the Thousand Plants sect in the past 50 years. I heard that Gonyang Yongfeng is reaching his ultimate limit soon. He never walked out of the sect in the past 50 years in order to train his successor. He accepted a disciple and trained him wholeheartedly. Everyone's vision shifted towards the gaze of Thousand Plants sect, and it turned out to be the individual cultivator with outstanding aura just now. Yi Ziwen's demeanor, which was different from ordinary individual cultivators, made everyone remember him immediately just now. They wondered what incident made Thousand Plants sect so furious. Master, it is him. He's the one that abolished Brother Zhou's martial arts. He even said that he would like to see what kind of sect teaches such a disciple. A young and emotional disciple looked at Yi Shiwen with resentful eyes. He just fled in front of Yi Shiwen earlier after witnessing his senior brother's martial arts being abolished, and he couldn't do anything. This was a great humiliation for him. Now, he finally found his master and could teach a hard lesson to this brat who underestimates others' capabilities. Are you the one who abolished my last disciple's martial arts? Gonyang Yongfeng's face was ice-cold and ghastly pale. He said while staring at Yi Shiwen. He looked like a tiger who could devour someone at any time. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but to gasp. Everyone originally didn't know what made the people in Thousand Plants sect so angry, but they did not expect that this was the case. Everyone knew that the Gonyang Yongfeng's position in Thousand Plants sect was very high. In fact, it was slightly higher than the sect lord. Because of his towering seniority, he was already the supreme elder of Thousand Plants sect when the current sect lord entered Thousand Plants sect. Not to mention that now almost all his contemporaries had already withered except for him. Everyone was also very clear that the Gonyang Yongfeng's ultimate limit was approaching, so the people were more tolerant to him normally. This kind of person who was about to die was not afraid of anything, and he had no concerns. Once a person offended him, there might be scruples usually, but now he was about to die. What was there to be concerned about? He was simply unscrupulous. These people also had their own trigger button, and Gonyang Yongfeng's trigger button was his last disciple, as everyone knew. Because he was on the verge of death, he poured all his energy into that disciple. It could be said he taught his disciple everything that he knew, as this was his last hope, the hope in which he passed down all his legacies. Everyone knew that even if they were going to mess with Gonyang Yongfeng, they should not mess with his disciple. Not to mention his martial arts were actually abolished. No wonder Gonyang Yongfeng looked like he was about to explode with anger. That last disciple was his last hope. Now, the disciple's martial arts was abolished by Yi Shiwen. It was like shattering all his hopes. The consequences of shattering all hopes of a dying man were unimaginable. Particularly, the disciple who Gonyang Yongfeng was committed to train. Even if the disciple was not capable, he was still a master in Sage Realm. But this individual cultivator actually abolished his martial arts. This was simply a mind-blowing miracle. Most importantly, this person didn't leave and even dared to come over. Is he crack-brained or brain-dead? Yi Shiwen nodded gently without denying. He whispered in his heart, no wonder that the fatty named Zhou was so arrogant and domineering. He didn't respect people at all. Turns out he has a great sage-level master. In a typical force, this was indeed enough to be rampant, just like Xiaoya who entered a transcendent realm sect previously. Especially this Gonyang Yongfeng who obviously appeared in angel decay state. Yi Shiwen also understood that it was the worst to offend this dying person because they no longer had hope. So they were more reckless in doing things. Normally, people would tolerate and wait until this old man was dead, but that was not Yi Zaiwen's personality. The fatty named Zhou was so arrogant. Perhaps it had something to do with the pampering of this Gonyang Yongfeng. After seeing Yi Shiwen nodding his head, Gonyang Yongfeng's initially restrained momentum was suddenly released. At that instant, it was like stormy waves forming in a calm lake. The endless loud coercion was released unscrupulously. It dispersed in all directions with Gonyang Yongfeng as the center. His only beloved last disciple's martial arts was actually abolished by Yi Shiwen. It was like earth-shattering news for him. Because he knew that he was running out of time, so he was more focused on the cultivation of this disciple. He even did his best to cultivate his disciple with the hope of passing down his legacy. Although he was late in accepting his disciple did not disappoint him anyway. He cultivated to be a sage realm in a short time. With the preparations he left for contingencies, it was very probable that his disciple could even enter great sage in the future. But now someone had shattered this hope. His disciple's martial arts was abolished. He examined the injury already, and there was no possibility of recovery. This was equivalent to someone blowing out his dreams. Most importantly, the remaining time was simply not enough for him to continue to find a successor and cultivate talents. The burning anger in his heart was like a volcanic eruption, all spreading out in all directions. Those surrounding warriors, be it sage realm, semi-sage, or legend, immediately knelt down from the shock of the horrifying aura outburst, as if they met their own king. In the face of the horrifying aura resulting from a great sage's violent rage, they were like little white rabbits shivering in fear when facing the roar of a furious old lion. They were shivering in fear and unable to move at all because their bodies were stiffened. The coercion from his spirit made them feel somewhat suffocated. The people of Thousand Plant sect were of no exception. The furious Gonyang Yongfeng did not consider them at all, and perhaps did not even take them to heart. He had no interest in anything else except for his last disciple. It was already so terrible to be swept away by this stream of momentum. They were trembling with fear. It was impossible to imagine Yi Zaiwen's condition, who was suffering most of the coercion. Yi Shiwen was like a small boat in a rainstorm. It seemed like it would sink any time, but it persisted forever. Yang Tingyu next to Yi Shiwen had already pushed his cultivation to the extreme. He was ready to die. Even if the great sage thought that he was basically like an ant, being overly ambitious to attempt something impossible, but since he chose to come in, he was mentally prepared for death. He just didn't expect that by being at Yi Zaiwen's side, the boundless and horrifying aura disappeared in front of Yi Zaiwen's body. He still looked calm and relaxed, as if the stream of horrifying aura was not existing at all. Yang Tingyi's eyes were full of inexplicable shock. What is the origin of this senior Long whom I accidentally encountered? Gonyang Yongfeng is a great sage. For them, a great sage was undoubtedly like a celestial being. Even with just his aura, it was enough to completely crush a half-step great sage. Those who could escape from a great sage were all elites. This senior Long even resolved the coercion of a great sage casually? Is he a great sage too? 1. https://en. Wikipedia. org/wiki/the_potential. Chapter 676. Good. Very good. Gonyang Yongfeng said it again and again. His complexion was already pale, and his gaze was burning in anger that it could set the sky on fire. His last disciple's martial arts was abolished. Although his disciple did not die, it was no different from death in his heart. There was no difference at all. His whole life's hard work was completely ruined at this moment. He never thought that the reason behind such a calamity would also be related to his pampering of his disciple on normal days. If it wasn't for his usual pampering of his disciple would not be so arrogant and domineering, bullying the weak for fun. Then, it would not have caused Yi Shiwen to attack. He just thought it was the fault of the person in front of him. From a certain sense, his disciple and Gonyang Yongfeng actually shared the same origin and were tarred with the same brush. The disciple's behavior naturally reflected the teacher's behavior. It was the eternal truth that similar people fit well and birds of a feather flock together. Your disciple is just seeking his own death, Yi Shiwen said while sneering continuously. Gonyang Yongfeng was actually a great sage late master. After all, he had experienced countless years of cultivation. Logically, Yi Shiwen was most probably not his match, and Yi Shiwen could only escape. Unless Yi Shiwen summoned Star Beast Avatar, then there was a possibility of defeating him. But Gonyang Yongfeng had now entered the angel decay state. All aspects had fallen from the peak state and suddenly plummeted to an unprecedented declining state. His whole body was shrouded in a decaying atmosphere that ordinary people couldn't see. It seemed like he just managed to maintain the status of Great Sage Intermediate Peak now, and it would change over time. It might even continue to decline continuously. This was the normal life of aging and death. When the angel decay occurred, warriors who never encountered aging and death in their entire life would suddenly go through a lifetime of aging in a short period of time before dying completely. If you are counting on him to continue your legacy, then you should give up earlier. Then, you don't have to jump out of your grave later due to anger. Yi Shiwen laughed mockingly at the Gonyang Yongfeng's insight of selecting his successor without holding back. He actually chose such a person to be his legatee. Although the successor did not have to be a great philanthropist, at least his mind must be mature and firm. A person like his disciple was like a flower which grew in a greenhouse, unable to withstand any difficulties. He looked mighty, but he was just a paper tiger. Yi Shiwen didn't care about him at all. Gonyang Yongfeng was about to be angered to death by Yi Shiwen. Not only did he abolish Gonyang Yongfeng's favorite last disciple, he even mocked recklessly here. You are courting death. Gonyang Yongfeng swung one of his hands, and the whole ground surface shook violently. A huge wooden spear penetrated from the ground below and went straight to Yi Ziwen's feet, attempting to pierce through Yi Shiwen into half. This thousand plants sex martial technique was simpler compared with Medicine King Valley. They constantly cultivate all types of spiritual fruits, celestial materials, and rare treasures. The plants were mostly sold to Medicine King Valley and other alchemy cultivating sects in exchange for various other resources. Yi Shiwen screamed, and his eyes were full of fighting intent. Since pushing his cultivation into the peak of half-step Great Sage Intermediate, he still didn't have the chance to attack and test it completely. Although the Gonyang Yongfeng in front of him only had the peak strength of the Great Sage Intermediate now, he used to be a Great Sage late after all. In terms of combat power, it would probably be enough to defeat all Great Sage Intermediate. After entering Great Sage, very few people could progress cultivation all the way. It was even considered lucky for many people to enter Great Sage. It was very possible that one would not progress one bit for his whole life after entering. Yi Shiwen also believed that his combat power stood at the peak of Great Sage Intermediate. This battle was enough to confirm his thoughts. He even wanted to use this battle to sharpen his skills and break through in the battle. He might be able to break through in an instant. All he wanted now was an evenly matched battle. Golden divinity liquid began to emerge beneath Yi Ziwen's feet. It was majestic like towering waves crashing down. Kaboom! The golden divinity waves collided with the green wooden spear, and it made a scary explosion sound, as if something was crushed. The green wooden spear broke through the divinity waves and rushed in. Boom! With a roar, the wooden spear instantly turned into powder and was drowned by the golden divinity waves. Yi Shiwen had the upper hand in the first battle. Gonyang Yongfeng was completely infuriated. As a great sage, he had cultivated for many years. In Thousand Plant Sect, his position was almost above all and second to only one person. Even the current sect lord was his junior. It was conceivable that with his position in Thousand Plant Sect, he had always been respected and admired by thousands of people. He had never been ignored and reprimanded like this before. Most importantly, the person in front of him had crippled his beloved disciple whom he regarded as his legatee. He was almost bursting in anger already. He couldn't wait to chomp his flesh. The golden divinity waves under Yi Zaiwen's feet turned into a glimmer of light. He rose up and flew towards the outer universe. He didn't want to fight here because it was a power battle between great sage levels. Even if this was the old nest of Medicine King Valley, which probably had many arrays arranged, the battle could still cause a huge damage. This was not Yi Zaiwen's initial intention. You want to flee? No way. Gonyang Yongfeng saw Yi Shiwen was flying away and chased after him immediately. A green gourd appeared in his hand, spitting out green wood energy covering the sky. It transformed into wooden spears spreading all over. It seemed like a series of green waves immediately covering towards Yi Yuan. The atmospheric layer of the huge star where Medicine King Valley was located was far from comparable to that of real martial domain. It was not even 1/10 of it. Yi Shiwen just used a fraction of martial arts, and he had already flown out of the atmospheric layer. The wooden spear waves formed by the countless wood energies were also approaching behind him aggressively. Yi Shiwen could make a move with no worries when he was out of the universe. He turned around and shot out a punch suddenly. A big star was formed, and it slammed down the air with rumbling sounds. It was also like a millstone crushing the air. The wooden spears hit by his fist turned into endless fragments on the spot and scattered in the universe. Gonyang Yongfeng's movement was also fast. He caught up with Yi Shiwen in a split second. He panicked suddenly because his attack was shattered easily. He originally chased after him just to prepare for contingencies. He never took Yi Shiwen to his heart. Yi Shiwen was just a half-step great sage. How could Yi Shiwen be compared with him? His insight was naturally stronger than those of individual cultivators. He could see that Yi Shiwen was just a half-step great sage at a glance, so he didn't even bother about Yi Shiwen. He was also convinced that Yi Shiwen abolished his disciple's martial arts. He certainly knew his disciple very well. His disciple was just in sage realm. In the face of half-step great sage, his disciple definitely couldn't cope with it. Gonyang Yongfeng just didn't expect to see such a shocking scene when he came up just now. The gourd in his hand was a great sage tool that he had cultivated for many years. Although he had no right to launch it, the scene of Yi Shiwen breaking his attack easily left him stunned for a moment in his heart. However, fury soared into his heart again immediately after that. He despised Yi Shiwen very much in his heart. If he couldn't tear him into pieces, it would be difficult to get rid of his hatred. His entire Buddhist chi was triggered, and a mighty great sage's powerful chi swept out. Those semi-sage or sage realm warriors who caught up later on felt as though the ground was shaking and the mountains were moving. A stream of infinite strength was unleashed. The sky, earth, oceans, stars, sun, and moon were all swept away in an instant. Compared with the full outbreak now, the stream of great sages' aura just now was considered nothing at all. During the angel decay, all vital energies and blood would deplete quickly and disappear in a short period of time. Therefore, all warriors usually practiced condensing the power of vital energies and blood during the angel decay so that they would not be discharged easily during attack. Because once they were discharged, it was difficult to replenish and it would accelerate their aging. Just like once a person was injured, he might look as good as before, but he actually consumed the originally stored undivided growth cells. This was also the case with warriors. The vital energies and blood power consumed could be replenished in the previous heyday. But once they entered the angel decay, the more they used, the less would be remaining. This was similar to the previous old sect lord who survived by a special secret method to reduce the weakening of vital energy and blood to a minimum. However, after the last battle, all his vital energies and blood were exhausted. He passed away while sitting cross-legged on the spot, and that was it. Gonyang Yongfeng had unleashed his full combat power now. He was already madly furious without holding back. Swoosh! With a shrilling blast through the air, Gonyang Yongfeng had reached in front of Yi Shiwen. He had completely let go. The speed of Gonyang Yongfeng burning his vital energies and blood almost accelerated to the extreme. Although he was madly furious, he still had some sanity after all. He was determined that Yi Shiwen would not be his match, so he went all out to kill Yi Shiwen. Although attempting to kill, Yi Shiwen immediately would consume a heap of vital energy and blood. It was still within his acceptable range as long as it was not a prolonged battle. Pung! The entire universe seemed to be torn apart by his figure suddenly. Gonyang Yongfeng appeared with a wooden spear in his hand. The spear's vitality was exuberant. It was as though the spear was not a weapon, but a heavenly huge tree instead. A vast ancient aura emerged from it. The entire sky had become a sea of wood chi, and it was full of vitality everywhere. In order to cultivate this woody chi, he had cultivated for a long time. If this woody chi was put into the desert, it would be able to let the entire desert be covered with greenery and become full of vitality almost immediately. The power of a great sage was incredible, and even Yi Shiwen couldn't do it. But Yi Shiwen didn't need to be able to do it as long as he had the corresponding combat power. The long spear pierced through the sea of woody energy. It pierced straight towards Yi Shiwen. Chapter 677. Chapter 677. Is he a monster? Clang! The light of the sword in Yi Ziwen's hand soared up to the sky. The sword's light tore the sky, and the long sword slipped down instantly, forming a huge ripple mark before it fell down. Kaboom! The long sword and the wooden spear met in the air, bursting into boundless sparks and making clashing sounds. It was an unparalleled clash. Gonyang Yongfeng was indeed a former great sage late master. Although his strength had fallen to a certain level, it was still enough to wipe out all the great sage intermediate masters. His skinny arm had the strength of 10 million pounds that could split the star and universe with one shot. If it was another average great sage intermediate, this move would probably send him off in the air. The difference between great sage intermediate and great sage late was unimaginable. Although Yi Shiwen had reached the peak of half-step great sage intermediate, if Gonyang Yongfeng was still in peak state, Yi Shiwen could only flee unless he summoned the Star Beast. But Gonyang Yongfeng encountered a freak like Yi Shiwen, and Yi Ziwen's fighting ability was extraordinary. His domineering body had remarkable strength. If they were in the same realm, he could even completely crush Gonyang Yongfeng. Even though his realm was far inferior to Gonyang Yongfeng, he wouldn't give in at all. "I'm going to tear you to pieces," roared Gonyang Yongfeng. He hated Yi Shiwen so much that his Bodhi's vital energy and blood was boiling, and he wasn't stingy to exert any of it anymore. His anger had completely clouded his rationality. He was flamed in anger, and it was basically impossible for him to think about his Bodhi's vital energy and blood that was draining. It was not only because of his fury, but also because he couldn't stop. He was in a period of declining vital energy and blood of the angel decay, but Yi Shiwen was in his peak condition. Yi Shiwen was simply stronger after each battle. At first, Gonyang Yongfeng chased after Yi Shiwen, but he soon realized that Yi Shiwen was more proactive than him. With a wave of Yi Ziwen's long sword, the overpowering wind tore open the sky, which was horrifying. These overpowering winds could even tear the space, not to mention a human body. But Yi Shiwen was different because he had a domineering body to protect his body. With the strength of the domineering body, he had no scruples at all to go all out. Even if he was hit by the spear chi, it would be difficult to hurt him. It would only scratch some white traces on his bronze skin. So looking at it at this moment, it turned out that Yi Shiwen had the upper hand, and he became stronger the more he fought. Countless warriors in the distance could only watch from afar. The battle of two great sage-level characters was so powerful that it could destroy everything. It was hard to imagine. The universe space was constantly cracking when the two were battling. The peak pointed by the tip of the spear or sword would crack like a spider web. With the tip of the spear or sword as the center, it would crack outwards wildly. The skyline seemed to be screaming a devastating cry. Faced with such a horrifying battle, everyone's facial expression changed, as if they saw something incredible. How is this possible? Who is this person? How can this person battle with senior Gonyang Yongfeng without showing any weakness? He is really scary. Everyone was nodding. Gonyang Yongfeng was well known in this area, and everyone knew Gonyang Yongfeng. When they first entered the cultivation path, Gonyang Yongfeng was already a big shot who was very famous. But who was this person who could actually evenly match Gonyang Yongfeng? No, they're not just evenly matched. This person is clearly suppressing the old man, a man exclaimed, but he didn't continue because he saw a lot of Thousand Plants sect's disciples around him were glaring at him. But everyone knew what he meant. Gonyang Yongfeng's battle was more than a tie. There was also a trend of this person suppressing him, because one side was not afraid of death while the other side was cautiously blocking. From the scene, it was Gonyang Yongfeng who attacked less and defended more. It was an awful scene. Darn, if it isn't because elderly predecessor has entered angel decay now where his strength is far worse than before, that person can't match elderly predecessor. A Thousand Plants sect disciple said indignantly. In his opinion, if elderly predecessor was not falling into angel decay now, how could he be suppressed and beaten by Yi Shiwen? It was simply impossible. Many Thousand Plants sect disciples who were surrounding him nodded, and many other sect disciples also nodded. Gonyang Yongfeng's situation was not a secret. Many people knew it. After all, he was already old, and it was normal to fall into angel decay. But don't forget, that person is not a great sage. He's just a half-step great sage, but he can suppress and beat a great sage. Such a horrifying fighting power. Do you think it matters if Gonyang Yongfeng is in a peak state? If you put it this way, then wouldn't Gonyang Yongfeng be doomed if the person is a great sage? At this time, Yang Tingyu was the one who spoke. He saw everyone agreeing to the Thousand Plants sect disciples' words, so he couldn't hold himself from speaking for Yi Shiwen. When he chose to come in with Yi Shiwen, he was already standing on the same boat with Yi Shiwen. Although it was partly impulsive at that time, he also had the idea of betting on it. He was already tired and sick of such a cowardly life. Everyone looked at Yang Tingyu immediately, especially those Thousand Plants sect disciples who were even glaring at him. In particular, those who had met Yi Shiwen in front of the valley before. They even wished to eat Yang Tingyu alive. In their view, if it weren't for these lowly individual cultivators, the subsequent incidents wouldn't happen. Moreover, it caused Brother Zhou's martial arts to be abolished and even forced elderly predecessor to make a move. All of these were the lowly individual cultivators' fault. They saw Yi Zaiwen's frightening combat power. Even elderly predecessor, who they worshipped like gods, did not stand any advantage in Yi Zaiwen's hands, so they did not dare to blame Yi Shiwen. It was like the ants in the face of gods. No matter how resentful they were in the heart, they dare not blame. But their anger needed to be vented, so they vented to these individual cultivators. If it wasn't because of these individual cultivators, how would they end up like this? They would definitely not think it was their own problem and would only blame others. But more people thought that this was indeed the case. Although it seemed a bit unfair for Gonyang Yongfeng, because Gonyang Yongfeng was not in the peak state, that person was not even a great sage. It was simply a miracle that he could actually fight with Gonyang Yongfeng like this. Putting aside the fact that he could fight a great sage, it would be a super glorious thing even if he could escape from a great sage initial master. In particular, Gonyang Yongfeng, who had monumental prestige and reputation among the great sages. Who is this person? If there was such a remarkable person, it was impossible that they had not heard of it before. They were confident that they would not judge wrongly. The difference between great sage and those below great sage was still huge. The person in front of them had incisive attacks and was unyielding. He did not seem to be worse than a great sage, but they could still see that he was not a great sage. It was just that his strength was comparable to a great sage. This was also what made it even more unbelievable. At this time, even the thousand-plant sect disciples were speechless. Even if they had thousands and millions of reasons, they could not erase the fact that Yi Shiwen was fighting a great sage as a half-step great sage. Solely this fact left them tongue-tied. Yi Shiwen was more horrifying than Gongyang Yongfeng, who was not in his peak state. Fighting a great sage as a half-step great sage was simply a myth for them. He was just like a myth and legend. No, they never even heard of it before. A question popped out in everyone's mind inevitably: is he a monster? Otherwise, how could he possibly accomplish things that no one could? With a long sword in his hand, Yi Shiwen was just like a terrifying swordsman. The battle between the two went all the way to the depths of the universe, and every meteorite along the way exploded. The space was full of spider web-like cracks, which were in all directions. There was no distinction of up and down in the universe. All directions were filled with the traces of the battle. The chi of the spear and the sword dispersed everywhere. There were frequent collisions of uncountable spear chi and sword chi. The sparks that burst out from the collision could ignite everything. It was very scary. Everyone was afraid to go close when they saw this scene. They could only watch from a distance. Once they were close, even the spattered chi of the spear and the sword could kill them. Particularly Yang Tingyu, whose face was especially flushed. He watched Yi Shiwen battle excitedly. After he followed Yi Shiwen into the Medicine King Valley, it was like a desperate bet where he put all of his eggs in one basket. He even thought of it as repaying Yi Zaiwen's gratitude. He was considered a person who already died once anyway, so there was nothing to lose. He only knew that Yi Shiwen was very powerful. A sage realm master was teased like bugs in Yi Zaiwen's hands, but he did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so powerful to this extent. He could fight against Gongyang Yongfeng, who was a long-known master among the great sages, without being in an inferior position. In fact, Yi Shiwen even prevailed. At least this meant that he didn't have to die. Even if Gongyang Yongfeng burst into rage, he could protect himself. Not only he didn't have to die, but it seemed that he even followed a super mighty person. This was simply an unexpected joy. It was an opportunity. Indeed, this was the opportunity that everyone talked about. Opportunity was the most important thing for a warrior. He didn't expect that his impulsive decision could actually give him such a great opportunity. Yi Shiwen didn't know that the people outside the battlefield were discussing incessantly. At this time, he was completely immersed in battle. The Guanren Sutra in his body was spinning speedily, and streams of powerful qi gushed to all his limbs, making him as strong as an ox. He was just like a Greek god who fully unleashed all his strength. He actually looked more skilled the more he battled. Chapter 678. That monster. Chapter 678. That monster-like person was injured. Yi Shiwen hadn't had such a hearty battle for a long time. Over this period of time, he had encountered opponents who were either too difficult to beat, like the Soul Destruction Temple Master, or some extremely weak and flimsy people. There was no evenly matched opponent at all. Those people who were his peers at that time, and those masters who could have battled with him, fell behind him gradually over time. His peers had become unable to withstand a battle. Therefore, it was not easy for him to find an opponent who let him battle to his heart's content, but he had found such a hearty feeling in Gongyang Yongfeng now. The feeling of being evenly matched, where Yi Shiwen was neither too weak nor too strong. He could give his all into the battle. The long sword in his hand drew glimpses of sword light, like it was tearing the sky and cutting it horizontally across. Suddenly, the sword and the spear were fighting together. Golden lights crept all over Yi Zaiwen's whole body gradually. This meant that in his heart, Gongyang Yongfeng was a worthy opponent, and Yi Shiwen needed to do his utmost. After all, his realm was too low, relatively speaking, because he was just a half-step great sage intermediate. He was not even a great sage. Otherwise, he didn't need to battle so hard at all, and could defeat Ganyang Yongfeng easily. On the other side, Ganyang Yongfeng was more panicked as they battled on. Yi Shiwen was more powerful after each battle, because Yi Shiwen had Phoenix regeneration technique, which enabled his vital energy, and blood seemed to be endless. Yi Shiwen was always at his peak condition wherever he was. In contrast, Ganyang Yongfeng's vital energy and blood was not endless. The more Ganyang Yongfeng used it, the less was remaining. His original plan was to burst out a powerful combat power and restore to peak instantly, so that he could kill Yi Shiwen. In that case, even if it would consume some of his little remaining vital energy and blood, it was still within his acceptable range. But this battle was beyond his expectation. From the original plan of quick battle to a prolonged battle, his old age and decaying body became a fatal weakness at this time. It was not until now that he really felt old for the first time. He didn't even have such a strong feeling during angel decay previously. After all, it was his destiny, and he couldn't resist it. He really felt his aging evidently. But because of this matter, his gaze towards Yi Shiwen was even more like a beast that was about to devour people. Yi Shiwen ruined Ganyang Yongfeng's last hope. The dancing spear in Ganyang Yongfeng's hand was more terrifying, but he also felt Yi Zaiwen's more and more frenzied strength. Each slashing of Yi Zaiwen's sword was like Mount Tai, one crushing down. When the long sword was in Yi Zaiwen's hands, he could crush his opponent directly without any swordsmanship. It was like a strong, unskilled man who could defeat 10 skilled men. No matter what magnificent spear skills you had, how strange the angle was and how tricky it was, it didn't matter to him. He confronted it directly. He charged towards you and tore you into shreds directly. In this case, Ganyang Yongfeng could hardly attack. Yi Shiwen could take on Ganyang Yongfeng's spear with his bare hands without changing his expression. But Ganyang Yongfeng couldn't do such a horrible thing. If he was cut by the sword, he would probably pass away while sitting cross-legged without having to wait for angel decay. Ganyang Yongfeng felt that his arm was almost numb every time they collided. It was just like the moment of being electrocuted or a high voltage of hundreds of thousands of volts which instantly paralyzed his arm. If it wasn't because of the wood martial technique he cultivated, which had a special effect in repairing things in the body, his arm would have been shattered by Yi Shiwen by now. This was the first time he felt that a human body could actually be so powerful to such a horrifying extent. Yi Shiwen was actually able to challenge across power realms. Ganyang Yongfeng was a great sage himself, so he knew that the gap between great sage and sage realm was basically a world's difference. He had never encountered a person who could challenge across power realms. Not to mention, it was against an experienced great sage like him. Such a person was worthy of being the world's utmost pride. So let me die. There was a trace of madness in Ganyang Yongfeng's eyes. He could feel that if he continued to fight like this, Yi Shiwen might exhaust him to death. He could feel that as the battle became more intense, Yi Shiwen was somehow acting by instinct. Yi Zaiwen's eyes were a little misty. He was in sudden enlightenment. Suddenly, it was difficult to suppress the burning anger in Ganyang Yongfeng's heart as it soared all over his body. He wanted to seek revenge for his beloved disciple and kill this guy who dared to abolish his disciple's martial arts. But Ganyang Yongfeng did not expect to be treated as a stepping stone for this person to advance. The person in front of Ganyang Yongfeng obviously battled with Ganyang Yongfeng in order to break through the current state in one shot. Compared to the anger of being used as a stepping stone, the fear of Yi Zaiwen's breakthrough made Ganyang Yongfeng tremble uncontrollably. Yi Shiwen, who was only a half-step great sage intermediate, was already so scary now. If Yi Shiwen broke into half-step great sage late, there would surely be an increase in combat power regardless whether the combat power would push him into the great sage late level. At that time, it would not be a prolonged battle that was evenly matched, but a one-sided massacre. Thinking of this, there was a trace of madness in Ganyang Yongfeng's eyes. When he had already reached this point of entering angel decay, he no longer had any scruples. Good techniques. Such a person is unprecedented and earth-shattering. I have never seen a genius person like you, but such a person will fall into my hands today. Ah, it will make this life worthwhile. Gonyang Yongfeng laughed loudly, and his expression seemed a little fanatical. The gourd behind him boiled suddenly, getting bigger and bigger, and it soon became the size of a hill. The gourd opening burst open in an instant, and then endless of Qi gushed out of it uncontrollably, forming a huge Qi river which infused into Gonyang Yongfeng's body. In Yi Zaiwen's eyes, Gonyang Yongfeng's body was enriched gradually at a speed visible to the naked eye. The old spots on Gonyang Yongfeng's face soon disappeared, and the white hair turned to fine black hair. His originally crooked and thin body figure became taller and stronger in the blink of an eye. He actually returned to the most vigorous period of his adult life. Gonyang Yongfeng was no longer old and tattered, but filled with unimaginable surging vitality. With his sharp vision, he stared coldly at Yi Shiwen while licking his lips. His face was filled with cruel gazes. He almost could see Yi Zaiwen's looks, the great genius in his eyes, when Yi Shiwen fell in his hands. His Bodhis aura was also rising gradually before he suddenly broke through Great Sage Intermediate and returned to Great Sage Late. The familiar power surged all over his body. Finally, he returned to the Great Sage Late. He yearned this level of strength. Yi Shiwen, be careful. This old man actually forced all vital energy and blood in his body to recover to the highest peak with the endless Qi. He wanted to perish with you. After this battle, he definitely will die no matter whether he won or lost. Yi Mo shouted in shock. He was an old antique that had lived for countless years. An old monster who saw all kinds of tricks. At the moment when Gonyang Yongfeng began to transform, he already realized what Gonyang Yongfeng was up to. Yi Zaiwen's gaze became dignified immediately. He actually reverted to the Great Sage Late. Although he knew that Gonyang Yongfeng used to be a Great Sage Late, he did not expect that Gonyang Yongfeng would dare to make such a big decision. Gonyang Yongfeng would definitely die after this battle, no matter if it was a victory or a loss. Yi Mo was right in saying that Gonyang Yongfeng was planning to drag Yi Shiwen to perish together. Probably because Gonyang Yongfeng's last disciple was dead, and he was also close to his ultimate limit, so he was also like a desperate person who finally became crazy. However, Yi Shiwen did not give in at all. On the contrary, between his eyes as deep as the stars, it became scorching, as if two huge suns appeared in it. Yi Zaiwen's fighting spirit became higher. He already had the idea of using Gonyang Yongfeng as a stepping stone to make him break through. Now that Gonyang Yongfeng breaks through, he did not have any tension and fear. On the contrary, he was even more excited. In order to advance more, it was definitely better to have a higher stepping stone. At this time, someone finally noticed that Yi Shiwen was actually using Gonyang Yongfeng to brush up himself. When they noticed this, everyone was like crazy. It was already surpassing their imagination to fight Gonyang Yongfeng without being in an inferior position, but regarding Gonyang Yongfeng as a stepping stone was simply unimaginable for them. 1,000 Plants sect disciple even said mockingly, "He is overconfident. He actually dares to use a great sage as a stepping stone. He's really courting death. Now that elderly predecessor has returned to the peak, it will be a piece of cake to kill him." Obviously, they didn't notice that Gonyang Yongfeng was overdrawing his final vital energy and blood for the final battle. He wanted this battle to be his ending battle. Today is your doomsday. Gonyang Yongfeng's gaze was as sharp as a knife. His tall and sturdy body rushed to Yi Shiwen in an instant like a fierce beast. A wooden spear came out of his palm and fell in a flash with crashing sounds that were like the sound of a thunderstorm. The spear broke through the sound barrier in an attempt to stab Yi Shiwen into half. Yi Shiwen could almost feel that the terrifying strength of the spear was close to him. It was like a green lightning that had come straight to the front door in a split second. It was really scary. It was twice as fast as before. It was just completely different now. Dang! There was a sound of metals clashing. Yi Shiwen raised his hand, which transformed into a huge mountain, before pressing it down. Kaboom! There was a huge explosion sound. The whole mountain was pierced through by the spear. The sharp spear tip pierced directly into Yi Zaiwen's palm, and blood dripped profusely from Yi Zaiwen's hand. Everyone was silent, a deadly silence. Everyone kept quiet. This was the first time Yi Shiwen was injured in this battle. One a Chinese popular saying as a metaphor to depict something really heavy or great in magnitude. Chapter 679. Chapter 679. All previous efforts were wasted. That monstrous person was injured. Everyone gasped after seeing the scene in front of them. In their hearts, Yi Shiwen, who fought against a great sage as a half-step great sage, was almost like a demon god. He was really a monster, but now this monster was injured. He was injured indeed. In their perspective, if this was not a myth, then what else? Previously, the prediction of victory in their hearts had unconsciously weighted towards Yi Shiwen instead of Gonyang Yongfeng. Yi Shiwen was not a great sage, but did it matter? Who had ever seen a half-step great sage suppressing and beating a great sage? Yet Yi Shiwen did it. So they couldn't help but to think highly of Yi Shiwen indistinctly. Furthermore, the most important thing was that everyone could see Yi Zaiwen's vital energy and blood was vigorous and was in his peak state. Meanwhile, Gonyang Yongfeng's vital energy and blood was depleting as he used it. Sooner or later, Gonyang Yongfeng would die of vital energy and blood deficiency. But now Yi Shiwen was actually injured, and there seemed to be a complete turn of events. Initially, it was difficult for Gonyang Yongfeng to hurt Yi Shiwen no matter how he attacked Yi Shiwen. Now, Gonyang Yongfeng pierced into Shi Zaiwen's palm with just a move. Their moods were like taking a roller coaster ride. One moment they were in heaven, and the next moment they were in hell. I must break your bones today and let you die with a tragic end. I'll grind your bone and scatter the bone powder. Gonyang Yongfeng's voice was like from hell, cold, merciless, and cruel. This was his last battle. He would die regardless of victory or defeat, so he did not have any emotions. His mental fortitude upgraded in an instant. He was giving his everything in the impasse. This was a sign of breakthrough to the peak of the great sage. But at this time, Gonyang Yongfeng could only smile bitterly. Why didn't it come earlier? What is the use of this feeling now? He would definitely die after this battle, but then this feeling disappeared again. There was only a state of no sadness and no joy. The spear moved with achiang sound, and there was a faint sound like a dragon whistling. Azure green, brilliant rays glowed faintly on the wooden spear. It was unbelievably harder than golden iron after being tempered for numerous times. There was no more vitality in the wood now, only vicious killing intentions. Shua! The spear shook away its previous image and was approaching Yi Zaiwen's face again the next second. The speed was simply unimaginable. It was like a long dragon with its mouth wide open, longing for a bite. In between Yi Zaiwen's eyes, it seemed that cosmic stars were being destroyed and reborn. He had also entered the state of enlightenment. He had never changed his mind about using Gonyang Yongfeng to brush up himself. Boom! The spear penetrated into Yi Zaiwen's body, and at that moment, it turned into a cluster of golden light. The spear passed through the golden light and penetrated into the space fiercely. Chaos seeped through the broken space which shattered the nearby meteorites. Although it was only a small cluster, it was as heavy as Mount Tai. The cluster of golden light did not disappear. Instead, it soared all the way along with the spear and went straight to Gonyang Yongfeng. Then, it transformed into a human figure like a celestial deity. Yi Zaiwen's whole body was golden, as if it was forged by gold. He had ice-cold expressions. Behind him was a pair of huge wings, which were approximately 30 feet long when fully expanded. They flapped suddenly, turning into an endless storm power in an instant. It was like one after another storm blades charged towards Gonyang Yongfeng. Every storm blade was a few inches long. Although it was not big, it could cut off anything. With the support of the infinite storm power, the speed was abnormally fast. The blades reached less than 3 inches in front of Gonyang Yongfeng in an instant. In between Gonyang Yongfeng's eyes, a fine light flickered past. With a sneer, the wood energy all over his body spewed out, and trees actually grew wildly on his body. They formed a body armor which covered him in it completely. The storm blade severely chopped the trees, but the armor could not be penetrated. So the endless storm power dissipated in the air. Yi Shiwen roared fiercely. It was just a prelude just now. He charged forward with his left hand squeezed into a fist and suddenly punched down. It turned into a gigantic star which stamped on the wooden armor. Swoosh! Kaboom! Bang! All kinds of noise popped up in an instant. Yi Zaiwen's fist pressure thrusted on the wooden armor fiercely, and a part of the wooden armor cracked at the moment of contact. But the wood energy seemed to be endless. The cracks were repaired immediately after they were shattered. It was constantly broken and repaired continuously. Even with Yi Zaiwen's infinite strength, he couldn't penetrate it in a short time. It was almost time. Shortly, Yi Shiwen finally cracked most of the wooden armor and saw Gonyang Yongfeng under the wooden armor. But Gonyang Yongfeng was slightly sneering under the broken armor. Yi Shiwen sensed something amiss suddenly. An unpleasant feeling hit his heart suddenly, and he stepped out of the golden light quickly while his body shifted out hundreds of feet instantly. At the same time, a long spear grew out of the wooden armor with an unimaginable speed and chased Yi Shiwen directly. The spear's speed was actually not slower than Yi Shiwen. Poof! The long spear pierced its first cluster of golden light, and Yi Shiwen disappeared without a trace, but a spray of blood was spewed out. Thousands of feet away, Yi Zaiwen's figure appeared suddenly. He was panting, and his arm was bleeding profusely. A huge wound was torn on his arm, but his gaze was cold, and he didn't seem to care about the injury at all. During this confrontation, he suffered some losses. He used the Phoenix regeneration technique, and the wounds on his body were recovering at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. He knew very well that the Gonyang Yongfeng in front of him would probably be dead soon. The stronger Gonyang Yongfeng was, the faster he would decay. Yi Shiwen didn't even have to fight. He only had to hang on, and it would exhaust Gonyang Yongfeng to death. He was old, and his time had ended. Yi Zaiwen's speed was so rapid that even the Soul Destruction Temple's temple master couldn't catch up with his speed and let him flee eventually. But Yi Shiwen didn't want this battle to be like that. He wanted an upright battle. Not only was it a respect for his dying opponent, it was also to brush up himself at the same time. If his opponent was not strong enough, how could he have sufficient pressure to grow? Come on, let me send you off your last journey. Yi Zaiwen's mouth flashed a smile and charged upwards. It was another glimpse of golden light flashing which set off boundless golden waves. Everyone was dumbfounded. In their view, the two were fighting too fast. What they saw was simply pieces of afterimages, and it was difficult to really see the two fighting clearly, especially when they saw that Yi Shiwen was in an inferior position. Originally, Yi Shiwen was like wearing armor, and Gonyang Yongfeng couldn't seem to hurt Yi Shiwen at all no matter how hard Gonyang Yongfeng attacked. Yet, the situation was reversed now. Gonyang Yongfeng could injure Yi Shiwen now. Although Yi Shiwen could injure Gonyang Yongfeng as well, Yi Shiwen was at disadvantage. What was more unbelievable for countless people was Yi Zaiwen's swift recovery ability. The injuries on his body were recovering at the speed that they could see with their naked eyes. It was really incredible. Everyone was very puzzled. Even fools could see that Gonyang Yongfeng was overdrawing his vitality so that he could become unprecedentedly powerful in his last battle now. Yi Shiwen didn't even need to attack. Even dragging the battle would kill Gonyang Yongfeng. Why must Yi Shiwen fight against him fearlessly? In their hearts, this was not scientific at all. Senior Long is brushing up himself. Only Yang Tingyu said excitedly. He wants to brush up himself with the most powerful state of Gonyang Yongfeng in order to facilitate his breakthrough. Everyone couldn't help but to gasp after listening to him. Yi Shiwen was brushing up himself previously, and many people failed to notice this. But at that time, the battle between Yi Shiwen and Gonyang Yongfeng was considered evenly matched. In fact, Yi Shiwen had the upper hand, but it was different now. In the face of Gonyang Yongfeng, who was in Great Sage late, Yi Shiwen completely fell into the inferior position and might even be stabbed to death in a move. How would Yi Shiwen dare to brush up himself using Gonyang Yongfeng at this time? This is why you can never compare with Senior Long. You will only challenge the opponents within your ability. There will never really be a major breakthrough. Yang Tingyu thought proudly, while he looked disdainfully at the crowd who were in disbelief. It was as though he was the one fighting the grand battle at this time, rather than Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was injured from time to time, and the severe pain made him feel like gasping, but he was getting more excited as he battled. All of his martial techniques were running, especially Guanren Sutra and Phoenix Regeneration Technique. It was running almost all the time. He could already feel that the realm barrier was almost in front of him, and he could nearly break through it. It was just like separated by a layer of gauze, and he might break through at any time. The more he could feel the other realm, the more excited Yi Shiwen was in his heart. He was giving in his best in battling and didn't bother about his Bodis injuries. If it was any ordinary person, he would have been killed long ago. However, with the Phoenix Regeneration Technique, Yi Shiwen could return to the optimal condition within an extreme time. Therefore, he was not afraid of fatal damage at all, so he was more courageous as he battled. On the other hand, Gonyang Yongfeng had endless wood energy to restore his vitality. He was like a fighting machine that never wore out. The two fought all the way to the depths of the stars, and there were meteorites and space shattered around them everywhere. Both of their aura had escalated to the strongest point. They were already at the threshold of breakthrough. It seemed that the victory and defeat of the two sides were about to be revealed. Whoever broke through first would have an overwhelming advantage. "Two of you please stop." A resonant voice was heard from a distance. The sound came from afar. By this time, the two had battled to the point of sparks flying off in all directions, and both were fully immersed in it. How could they stop? This is a critical juncture. I need only one final push. Yi Shiwen shouted in his heart and shot a punch. The terrifying power of the punch struck Gonyang Yongfeng's body. Bang! Gonyang Yongfeng was directly blasted out. Gonyang Yongfeng's originally tall and straight figure shrank suddenly, and it became crooked again. His vitality was cut off immediately. Yi Shiwen was also about to take the breakthrough step, but he got stuck and failed to step out. All his previous efforts were wasted. Chapter 680? Chapter 680. Darn. Who said he is a semi-sage? All previous efforts were wasted. Yi Shiwen was only a step away from his goal. If only he had fought for a while more, he would be able to step in a half-step Great Sage late. By that time, he would really be just half-step away from Great Sage. Then, he could really start to prepare for the breakthrough of Great Sage. Initially, he was planning to think about the breakthrough after returning from Medicine King Valley, but now he had the opportunity to break through in advance, so he certainly would not give up. After all, it would be better if he could break through as soon as possible since a chaotic world was approaching. But Yi Shiwen didn't expect that after a bloody battle, Gonyang Yongfeng died of vital energy deficiency and blood deficiency when Yi Shiwen was just one step away from breaking through. In the end, Gonyang Yongfeng still didn't manage to kill Yi Shiwen before dying. Instead, he just died while sitting cross-legged directly. This feeling of being at the edge of breakthrough, and yet not breaking through, made Yi Shiwen so depressed that he could vomit blood. Elderly predecessor. Master. Grandmaster. After the crowd was quiet for a while, the people of Thousand Plants sect reacted immediately and flew to Gonyang Yongfeng. They saw Gonyang Yongfeng was already as thin as a lath to the point of mere skeletons. The battle just now had consumed his last vital energy and blood. Therefore, when Gonyang Yongfeng died now, he was like a skull covered with human skin, which looked really creepy. The Thousand Plants sect disciples' glare at Yi Shiwen was unusually vicious. They originally came to participate in the Truth Discussion Conference organized by several alchemy masters. Not only those individual cultivators felt the opportunity was rare, the Thousand Plants sect disciples shared the same sentiment too. For them, it was an utmost honor to meet the alchemy masters, who were not seen normally, and get some pointers from these masters. But the disciples didn't expect they would actually witness such a horrible scene upon coming here. The elderly predecessor, who they respected like God in their hearts, was actually killed by a punch. This was a miraculous phenomenon. Even though Gonyang Yongfeng's rapid decay of vital energy and blood made him far worse than he was at the beginning, he still had an invincible presence in his disciples' hearts, and his prestigious reputation was deeply rooted in their hearts. Before they entered the Thousand Plants sect, Gonyang Yongfeng was already a great sage who was well known in the area. They knew that Gonyang Yongfeng was not really killed by Yi Shiwen. Gonyang Yongfeng basically exhausted himself to death. He overdrawn all his physical strength, but he couldn't kill Yi Shiwen within a short period of time, and it developed to this ending eventually. Yi Shiwen was fine, but Gonyang Yongfeng was exhausted to death. But if it wasn't for Yi Shiwen, how would it develop into such a situation in the end? Their famous elderly predecessor actually died on the spot. It definitely never crossed their mind that if it weren't for their teasing or attempt to kill these individual cultivators previously, the latter series of events would not happen. That was the ultimate cause of everything, but they certainly would not admit it. They would only direct all their resentment to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't care about their vicious gaze. In his eyes, these people were all washed up. Yi Shiwen was still depressed that he was just one step away, but all his efforts were wasted. He was still figuring out what he just learned during the battle. Wherever Yi Shiwen looked, those people lowered their heads and did not dare to look directly at Yi Ziwen's gaze, which seemed very serious. A moment later, glimpses of lights came across the universe, headed by a white-haired old man with a youthful look. Beside him was Tian Budong, the leader of Feihong Mansion previously. "Hey, I didn't expect that we are one step too late," the white-haired old man with a youthful look said while sighing. "Brother Gonyang, seeing these people coming, Yi Shiwen was vigilant immediately because the people who came were extraordinary. Tian Butong's strength alone was greater than the current Yi Shiwen, and this white-haired old man with a youthful look was actually not inferior to Gonyang Yongfeng, who unleashed all his power completely just now. This old man was a master in great sage late, so Yi Shiwen had to be careful. If they launched an attack, then he might have to leave on the spot. But the white-haired old man with a youthful look was just lamenting before approaching Yi Shiwen and said, "May I know your name, brother?" Seeing this old man, many surrounding people recognized him. It turned out to be the Valley Lord of Medicine King Valley, Yao Buping. Seeing that Yao Buping did not seem hostile, Yi Shiwen was slightly relaxed. But come to think of it, it made sense too. After all, it was the elder of Thousand Plants sect who died, and not the people of Medicine King Valley. Yao Buping definitely didn't have to avenge for Gonyang Yongfeng. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen was not an average sage realm master. He was an elite master who exhausted even Gonyang Yongfeng to death. Although Yi Shiwen was not a great sage, his combat power was also comparable to a great sage. It was not worthwhile at all to offend a great sage for an elder of Thousand Plants sect. If a great sage was determined to fight against you, he would slaughter all your disciples, which would be a serious harm to the sect unless your mountain door was closed tightly. They were not so stupid to offend a mighty disciple for Thousand Plants sect. "My surname is Long," said Yi Shiwen. It turned out to be a brother Long. Yao Buping seemed to recall all of a sudden that there was indeed such a powerful person in the invitations he sent out. Although they were from individual cultivation sects, those who were capable of refining standard-grade pellets were only a few, let alone a semi-sage. In the past, Yao Buping heard that this man was a semi-sage alchemy master who was able to refine standard-grade pellets, so he invited Yi Shiwen to come. He even signed the invitation letter personally, so he had an impression of it. However, Yao Buping couldn't help but to smile bitterly at this time. What news is this claiming Brother Long is in semi-sage? Does he look like he's in semi-sage? Have you ever seen a semi-sage exhaust a great sage to death? He really wanted to strangle the person who gave him this news at that time. Yi Shiwen was clearly a half-step great sage. In fact, he was also a half-step great sage that could compete with a great sage. But it was alright. Previously, Yao Buping was still skeptical about Yi Zaiwen's ability to refine standard-grade pellets since he was only a semi-sage. Now, Yao Buping had completely believed it. It was more normal that a half-step great sage produced standard-grade pellets. What an honor to have Brother Longs here. Please excuse me for not going out to meet you, Yao Buping said while arching his hand repeatedly. Although he was much older than Yi Shiwen, he didn't feel it was inappropriate. Let me introduce to you. This is Brother Tian Butong from Feihong Mansion, said Yao Buping. Yi Shiwen arched his hands politely. Yi Shiwen was not a person who didn't understand politeness at all. Since the two men were not malicious to him, he was able to tell the good from the bad naturally. The three of them landed on the light while talking and laughing into Medicine King Valley. Everyone was a little dumbfounded. Yao Buping reacted like nothing happened. He didn't even burst into fury and wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, as everyone imagined. Suddenly, they were astounded. Particularly those Thousand Plants sect disciples who never expected that Yao Buping would have no intention to stand up for them. They couldn't help but to look at Yao Buping with resentment. They originally gazed at Yao Buping with joy to uphold the justice and to kill Yi Shiwen in order to avenge for Gongyang Yongfeng. But the result was Yi Shiwen was regarded as a brother. Yao Buping had no intention of standing up for elderly predecessor at all. Seeing the three people disappeared from their eyes, the Thousand Plants sect disciples were taken aback with shock. They all cursed and yelled suddenly, as if they wanted to vent all the anger that had not been vented just now because they didn't dare to. Only the Medicine King Valley disciples sneered and looked at the Thousand Plants sect disciples who were cursing. The underlying reason for this matter was soon spread out. Everyone knew that this issue was caused by Thousand Plants sect originally. Did they still expect the Medicine King Valley to offend this great character for Thousand Plants sect? A half-step great sage who could exhaust a great sage to death could definitely turn the Medicine King Valley into a complete chaos. After all, they were not powerful people like those from true martial school who could ignore the threats of great sages or even transcendent masters. If the Thousand Plants sect disciples had the ability, they would fight to death with Yi Shiwen and the others. It was simply impossible to expect Medicine King Valley to be their cat's paw one. The attitude towards a person changed with one's social position. There were still some great sages presiding over Thousand Plants sect, so the sect was not completely overlooked yet. But as the most mighty Gongyang Yongfeng, who was exhausted to death, the deterrent of the sect was also not as powerful as before. The world was cruel indeed. Many individual cultivators saw this scene, and they couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. These major sects were nothing more than that. Yi Shiwen and the other two landed on the light and went directly into the depths of Medicine King Valley. They no longer stayed at the plaza, which was basically the place for some individual cultivators. After the battle, just now, Yi Shiwen was listed as a VIP by the Medicine King Valley. Naturally, there was another place to serve them. Yi Shiwen followed Yao Buping and Tian Butong into a palace. There were hundreds of people in the palace's main hall. They were all the top elites in Sage Realm who had extraordinary aura. The lowest was in Sage Realm Great Mastery, and several of them were in half-step Great Sage. A Great Sage was even sitting on a throne at the other end of the main hall. These people shared a typical characteristic, which was the strong smell of pellets in their body. They were almost like human medicine. Every drop of blood in their body was a supreme treasure. Ordinary people could break into a master of the true way directly by just consuming a drop of their blood. All of them were alchemy teachers. Most of their time was spent in alchemy. Although they had unique alchemy cultivation techniques, they couldn't be compared with other martial artists who had been practicing all year round. So they basically consumed the pellets to push themselves all the way up. Therefore, these people had accumulated the power of countless medicinal materials, and their refining process was far less efficient than Yi Shiwen, which resulted in a large amount of medicinal materials to accumulate in the body. They were basically human medicine. In fact, putting them into an alchemy furnace would produce an almighty pellet. A person who is used by another to carry out an unpleasant or dangerous task. Chapter 681. Chapter 681. About to start, every drop of blood in their entire body was extremely valuable. Yi Shiwen heard from Yao Buping that these were all alchemy masters who could refine standard-grade pellets. Their cultivation might not seem remarkable, but they were all in sage realm. Although they seemed ordinary, their positions in the outside world were not very different from great sage. It was almost equivalent to the magnitude of more than 100 great sages gathering together. When thinking of this, Yi Shiwen could not help but to gasp. Although he expected that this conference might attract many masters who had succeeded in alchemy, he did not expect that it would attract so many great alchemy masters. Although their cultivations were not comparable to Yi Shiwen, the huge force behind them caused Yi Shiwen to be cautious. When these people refined pellets on typical days, many warriors must have benefited from them. They could simply roar, and it would probably summon many help from these expert warriors. It would be most troublesome to provoke these people, and no one would want to provoke them. These hundreds of people were not a lot, but their deeply rooted and intertwined relationship was like old trees and tangled roots. It was enough for any force in the universe to be fearful of them. These people were not lower than the great sage status in the outside world on normal days, so there were very few things that could attract them. It was only a pellet that could break through the great sage could bring them together. Such a pellet and pellet recipe was very rare and important for a force, but it was the same for them individually. Many of them were sage realm great perfection and even half-step great sage. It was also a matter of breaking into the great sage for them. Being able to break into the great sage with one's own strength was a rare thing itself. Not to mention that they spend most of their time on alchemy, so it was even more difficult for them compared to ordinary warriors. It was impossible to enter into the great sage unless they were top geniuses. However, the situation would be completely different with the help of such a pellet. Since their social positions were very high, they gained access to a lot of resources. If they could produce this pellet, then breaking into great sage would just be around the corner. Although they enjoyed the status and treatment no less than that of the great sage, they were not great sage after all. Aside from the fact that their lifespans were half of a great sage, their strength was also a far cry from a great sage. Generally speaking, great sages were not willing to provoke them, but a great sage could kill them easily if they were forced to. While they were enjoying the pride and treatment, such a sense of crisis made them want to break into great sage all the time. However, their cultivation, which was driven by pellets, could not process and absorb the pellets completely like Yi Shiwen, so it was more difficult for them to break through. In other words, it was impossible to go further if there was no miraculous encounter. They could only rely on pellets. So after hearing about this conference, they immediately rushed here from every part of the universe. Moreover, just some idle and individual alchemy masters in the nearby star region already amounted to hundreds of people. If all the alchemy masters came, the number would be much more than this. Semi-sage or legend individual cultivators would regard these people as great masters. Getting a few pointers from them would be enough for the individual cultivators to use for life. After the three of them entered the main hall, everyone looked at Yi Shiwen in unison. They were anticipating the identity of the next alchemy master, but looking at Yi Shiwen's unbelievably young appearance, they were unfamiliar and didn't know the origin of this man. "Brother Long, please take a seat," Yao Buping said to Yi Shiwen, pointing to one of the 4 thrones in the main hall. Those who could sit there were all great sages, while other sage realms or half-step great sages could only sit in other rows of seats. Obviously, this should have been Gongyang Yongfeng's seat, but since Yi Shiwen had killed Gongyang Yongfeng now, this became Yi Shiwen's seat logically. Yi Shiwen did not shy away, and he sat on that throne directly. Next to him was a great sage who was not from a sect, but an elderly predecessor in individual cultivation, Qing Xuanzi. His cultivation was very strong, which was not inferior to Tian Budong. An individual cultivator who could cultivate to such a level must have considerably remarkable talent and miraculous encounters. He must have a very distinguished reputation among the individual cultivators in this star region. Everyone wondered why Yi Shiwen was invited to sit on this throne. After all, this was a place that only great sages could touch. Most importantly, This was originally Gonyang Yongfeng's seat. Why was it actually given to Yi Shiwen now? What was happening? Some quick-witted people had already figured out that perhaps something happened to Gonyang Yongfeng. Gonyang Yongfeng rushed out furiously just now, but he did not come back. Meanwhile, Tian Budong and Yao Buping, who went out to look for Gonyang Yongfeng, brought another person back instead. This was quite obvious. If something didn't happen to Gonyang Yongfeng, Yao Buping would never give Gonyang Yongfeng's seat to the young man in front of them. Adding another throne was not a difficult thing. Yi Shiwen glanced at the alchemy masters present and actually spotted Jiang Zhouqing, the president of the Alchemist Association of the Great Wei Empire. Yi Shiwen had not seen him for more than 20 years, but he was quite the same from 20 years ago. There was no big difference, and the most important thing was that he could stand here, which meant that he had advanced to be an alchemy master and could refine standard grade pellets. This made Yi Shiwen slightly surprised. After everyone was seated, Yao Buping said, "Dear brothers, I am very happy that everyone can come to participate in this discussion this time, held by us at Medicine King Valley. This time, we will start to refine Violet Limitless Chi Pellet tomorrow onwards. I hope everyone will lend a hand by then." Hearing Yao Buping mentioning the pellet that would be refined this time, everyone's mind was extremely focused suddenly. What happened to Gonyang Yongfeng was no longer within their consideration. It had nothing to do with them anyway. They were just curious. On the other hand, this Violet Limitless Chi pellet had an extremely close relationship with them. This was the name of the pellet that could help them break into the Great Sage realm. It was said to be an ancient pellet recipe, which was obtained by Medicine King Valley. Of course, these origins were irrelevant to them, but the main point was that Medicine King Valley promised to distribute a pellet recipe to each of them once they succeeded. This was the reason why so many alchemy masters would be attracted in such a short period of time. Otherwise, why would they come to help in Medicine King Valley's matter? They only came because of this promise. Although having the pellet recipe would not mean they could definitely refine such pellets, it was much better than having no idea at all. Yi Shiwen was not really excited upon hearing this. He had no interest in the so-called pellet recipe originally. If he wanted a pellet recipe, he also had one in possession, but what he wanted was a pellet that allowed him to break through Great Sage. That was the top priority amongst others. But in this case, he could only act according to the situation. After refining the pellets, we at Medicine King Valley will also hold a truth discussion conference, and the alchemy cultivators nearby will also come. I hope that everyone can participate at that time," Yao Buping said while looking at the crowd. Sure enough, the interest on everyone's face was significantly less than the Violet Limitless Chi pellet just now, but they were still quite intrigued. After all, it was Violet Limitless Chi pellet that could help them break into the Great Sage realm. But they were still interested in this truth discussion conference. Normally, they all cultivated separately and rarely had the opportunity to gather together and discuss the truth. These people were considered the great masters in alchemy. Being together was not only beneficial for those individual cultivators, it was also an exceptional opportunity for the great masters to confirm their truth and absorb others' strengths too. As Yi Shiwen listened, this gathering mainly had two purposes. One was for Violet Limitless Chi pellet, and the other was the Truth Discussion Conference, which was also the most anticipated event of many individual cultivators. They understood that Violet Limitless Chi pellet had nothing much to do with them. Even if they get it, they would not be able to keep it. Even forces like Medicine King Valley must disperse the pellet recipe using this way. And the reason was to distribute the pressure. If only they had the pellet recipe, then the pressure they face would be unprecedentedly large that even Meteor Sect might attack them. However, if these pellet recipes were distributed to every top alchemy cultivator, then no one would target Medicine King Valley again. Then, the situation would be much better. Although the Alchemist Association was also a huge association, Medicine King Valley was only a sect force affiliated with the Alchemist Association. They were not the Alchemist Association itself. Furthermore, these individual cultivators naturally had self-knowledge, so they all put their attention on the Truth Discussion Conference after the pellets were refined. More than 100 alchemy masters discussing the truth was a grand occasion that had never happened for the individual cultivators. They could definitely benefit a lot from it. Perhaps they might even break through because of that. This was also true for these alchemy masters. So although it was not as exhilarating as Violet Limitless Chi Pellet, they were looking forward to participating in the conference as well. Of course, we will definitely participate. We have few chances of gathering like this normally. All thanks to Medicine King Valley for giving us the opportunity this time. That's right, we will surely participate. Although it was apparent that Medicine King Valley also wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to expand its influence and improve its status, everyone still echoed and cheered. After all, they had received the benefits from Medicine King Valley. The value of the Violet Limitless Chi Pellet recipe was priceless. Equals 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 bear with me on the long update here irrelevant to plot. Quick update on glossary. 1. Domineering body shall be referred as tyrant body from now on. 2. Real martial domain shall be referred as true martial domain from now on. I only realized it later on after I think about the relationship between true martial school and true martial domain. The very reason I chose the word true is because I have other glossary that goes with truth conference and true martial Dao. Chapter 682. Chapter 682. Shocking 4 thrones after everyone arrived, the alchemy conference began. There were dozens more people than they were at the beginning. They just arrived because they were situated too far away. They were all experienced and skilled cultivators who could refine pellets directly without resting. With Yi Shiwen and the other 3 men as the head, they reached a huge plaza directly. There were already many individual cultivators waiting around, but some were late. Nevertheless, the individual cultivators did not look upset. They think the latecomers were entitled to such treatment since they were all great masters. Yi Shiwen saw Yang Tingyu among the crowd, not far away. Because of Yi Shiwen, he also received special treatment by the people of Medicine King Valley. He was sitting cross-legged in the first row. It could be said that he was the only individual cultivator sitting there. Yang Tingyu naturally knew the reason for such a treatment, so he was slightly excited while looking at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen looked around. Within the entire plaza, there was a huge alchemy furnace which was approximately 100 feet long and 200 feet wide. It was gigantic like no other. The furnace walls were engraved with complex and profound arrays which exuded unspeakable majesty. It turned out to be a great sage device, which was a magnificent one. Countless spiritual energy which was seething underneath turned into a series of alchemy flames, which was constantly burning. This should be the Medicine King Cauldron, which was Medicine King Valley's magnificent great sage device which established the sect. According to the legend, it was a great sage device that was built and refined by the Medicine King Valley's sect founding patriarch in the past. The cauldron had refined countless worlds' outstanding pellets, which established its reputation gradually. The Medicine King Cauldron would not be used under normal circumstances, not only because it was not necessary, but also because the consumption was so tremendous that it would make one frown. Besides the founding patriarch, no one in Medicine King Valley could activate this Medicine King Cauldron alone. The past founding patriarch was an invincible master in the great sage, great perfection realm, but there was no longer such a person in Medicine King Valley now. At most, it was Yao Booping who was in the great sage late. Several great sages had to join hands to use the Medicine King Cauldron every time, and each activation would even consume a whole spiritual vein. However, it could also be seen that Medicine King Valley was extremely determined this time. If the pellet was refined successfully, a great sage would emerge directly on the spot. It was still worthwhile despite the enormous cost. The Medicine King Cauldron constantly exuded white, spiritual mist, which was mixed with medicinal fragrances assailing one's nostrils. There were probably many flavors of medicinal materials added. Everyone felt that inhaling this medicinal fragrance once would open up all their veins. It had endless benefits, especially for those individual cultivators. There were several legend individual cultivators who had a breakthrough into semi-sage on the spot. One could imagine the strength of this medicine effect. Layers of invisible arrays surrounded and protected this Medicine King cauldron because it was too important for Medicine King Valley. They were not afraid that someone would destroy the cauldron. With the mighty power of a magnificent great sage device, it was impossible to destroy the Medicine King cauldron even if all of these people attacked. Instead, they were concerned that some individual cultivators, or even some people with ill intentions in the Medicine King Valley, would disrupt the pellet refining. Although alchemy cultivation was not the mainstream, there were definitely a lot of alchemy cultivators, and Medicine King Valley was just one of them. Someone would surely be dissatisfied with the fact that Medicine King Valley was about to refine Violet Limitless Chi pellet. These people might attack, so Medicine King Valley was also extremely well prepared. Brothers, we have been tempering this Violet Limitless Chi pellet for more than 10 years, and it is already a semi-finished product long ago. I hope that all brothers will work together in the next phase to make this pellet a finished product, said Yao. Booping the Medicine King Valley could be said to rack their brains and invested a considerably huge amount of resources in order to refine this Violet Limitless Chi pellet. They had been tempering it into semi-finished products since more than 10 years ago, just to wait for it to be refined completely today. It was their first time refining Violet Limitless Chi pellet, so they naturally wanted to be well prepared. If they were to refine it in the future when they already had the experience, then everything would be simple. The huge consumption and preparation work could be reduced tremendously too. In other words, it was just a trial product now, and it would enter the streamlined production in the future. Of course, this level of pellet was already almost a level 6 man-grade pellet. Even if it entered the streamlined production, it could not be mass-produced. However, it would definitely be stronger than the present. The standard grade pellets were divided into 3 grades: Heaven, Earth, and Man. Each grade was divided into 9 levels. Among these 9 levels, Level 1 to Level 3 were inferior grades. Level 4 to Level 5 were middle grades. Level 7 to Level 9 were top grades. Level 6 was already the strongest pellet that Medicine King Valley could produce. As for the human grade top-level pellets, it must be performed by those in Transcendent Realm to be successful. Of course, if a Transcendent Realm master refined this kind of pellet, it would be much simpler. It would even require less consumption with higher chance of success, but alchemy was not the mainstream. Moreover, alchemy cultivation was tough. It was not easy to cultivate to be a great sage, let alone Transcendent Realm. Currently, only the president of the Alchemist Association was regarded as an alchemy cultivator in the Transcendent Realm. However, with Medicine King Valley's strength, it was naturally hard to invite a distinguished character like the president of the Alchemist Association. Many great alchemy masters nodded one after another, and they looked solemn. At this moment, they were in the same mood as the people in Medicine King Valley, which was to hope that the pellet could be refined successfully. Although the pellet had nothing to do with them eventually, they could obtain the pellet recipe. If it was refined successfully, they would surely have more experience, which would eventually increase the chances of success. More than 100 alchemy masters led by Yi Shiwen and the other 3 men started to sit cross-legged at all sides. They all started refining, and various colors of alchemy flames flew out instantly, shining the entire space and gushing into the Medicine King cauldron. Many individual cultivators were so fascinated by just watching the various alchemy flames that were rarely seen on usual days. If alchemy cultivators wanted to refine pellets, it was not possible to rely on ordinary flames only. Furthermore, most pellets would require various conditions, and one of the important points was the flame temperature. They all had cultivated their own alchemy flame, and every person's alchemy flame was different. These were all great alchemy masters, so the alchemy flame techniques alone would require the individual cultivators to learn for a long time. Particularly the 4 leading men sitting around Medicine King Cauldron, whose alchemy flames were stunning to see. Yao Booping and the 2 men's alchemy flames were close to blazing white color, and the temperature was very high. Only Yi Zaiwen's flame was different. It was actually a golden alchemy flame among the various alchemy flames. That golden alchemy flame was extremely dazzling and outstanding among all the alchemy flames. Although it seemed less than 1/10 of an average alchemy master, the light was shining brilliantly. It was as though his flame was about to suppress everyone's alchemy flames. The crowd's expression changed. Even Qing Xuanzi, Yao Buping, and Tian Budong were startled after seeing it. One could see a person's mentorship through their alchemy flames. Generally, the deeper the background, the better the martial techniques of alchemy flame. The alchemy flames of the three of them were also the top among the crowd. It was not only because of their deep cultivation, but also because they had the best mentorship. But compared to Yi Zaiwen's alchemy flame, their flames paled in comparison. It was nothing significant. Yi Zaiwen's alchemy flame was very small. It was not even 1/10 of an average alchemy master, so the size was not comparable to them. However, the dazzling light almost suppressed all the lights of other alchemy flames. What is his alchemy flame? How could it be so bright? Everyone was wondering about Yi Zaiwen's alchemy flame. Although the size was small, the quality was surprisingly high. It was like a feeling that an emperor was born, and their alchemy flames were inferior and subject to this alchemy flame. Everyone stared fixedly at this alchemy flame, especially Yao Buping. He felt fortunate that he did not stir up a conflict with Yi Shiwen because of Gonyang Yongfeng's matter. Otherwise, who knew whose loss would it be? However, what they didn't know was that this alchemy flame was nothing but Yi Zaiwen's spontaneous breakthrough after a day's time. It was a type of alchemy flame cultivation method called Golden Sun Sacred Fire, which Yi Shiwen learned from Yimo. It was the emperor of the alchemy flame. According to Yimo, his master, the supreme demon king, led the demon domain army to conquer the world and kill the super high-level alchemy cultivator in the past. The alchemy cultivator was said to be a domain lord too. His cultivation was very impressive, surpassing deities, saints, and sages. This was the fated alchemy flame which he cultivated. After the alchemy cultivator's death, the alchemy flame cultivation method fell into the hands of the demon king and finally passed on to Yi Shiwen via Yimo. However, this kind of fated alchemy flame was extremely difficult to cultivate. If Yi Shiwen cultivated by himself, it was impossible to cultivate a trace of the Golden Sun Sacred Fire, even after 100 years of cultivation. Fortunately, he had the help of the mysterious space where he could deduce the cultivation method. But even so, the cultivation method alone consumed a whopping 1 billion elixirs, while it took 2 billion elixirs to achieve this level of cultivation. In other words, while waiting for the arrival of other alchemy masters in this one-day period, he had consumed 3 billion elixirs, which was half of his net worth. The cost of this martial technique cultivation left Yi Shiwen flabbergasted. It was not inferior compared with Demon's Wings and Phoenix regeneration techniques, perhaps even more. However, although the technique had consumed a massive amount, the effect was obviously very remarkable. As soon as the Golden Sun Sacred Fire came out, the other alchemy flames pale in comparison. However, everyone was just surprised for a short moment and soon dived into refining the pellet. Everyone present were alchemy experts. They naturally understood all the important conditions of alchemy, and all types of alchemy flames were put into the alchemy furnace in the same beat as well. They all received the pellet recipe just now and naturally knew how to cultivate. Although it might not be entirely pure, it didn't matter because the Medicine King Cauldron was very resilient. If it was another typical alchemy furnace, it would probably explode long ago. However, the Medicine King Cauldron was very versatile. It was a very powerful device indeed. Time eventually passed while they were refining the pellet, and soon a month elapsed. Chapter 683. Chapter 683. Mutations. Many alchemy masters did not move at all for a whole month during the alchemy process. Rather, they continued to invest in alchemy flame in accordance with specific techniques, refining the pellets. Undoubtedly, for many alchemists, Refining the level 6 man-grade pellets had exceeded their capability. Sage Realm alchemists could only refine inferior pellets, such as level 1 to level 3 of man-grade pellets. If there were not 200 people collectively refining it in addition to having a great sage-level alchemy master, Yao Booping supervising it, they would never be able to refine Violet Limitless Chi Pellet. Even for Yao Booping at great sage level, it was beyond his ability to refine Violet Limitless Chi Pellet. If the patriarch from the past was still there, the situation would be very different. Despite it being nurtured for decades in addition to having hundreds of alchemy masters making a collective effort to refine it at this moment, the whole refining process would still take a whole month. The difficulty in refining Violet Limitless Chi Pellet was quite apparent. Not to mention it was beyond their ability too. But everyone was motionless as if they were just at the beginning stage. All of them were immersed in the pellet recipe. As the pellet recipe became more familiar, their movements began to be uniform, rhythmic, and regular. But the one having the biggest improvement was Yi Shiwen. Under the eyes of everyone, his progress was unimaginably fast. He had always been the center of attention since the beginning. The dazzling golden sun's sacred fire attracted everyone's attention. But soon everyone found out that his alchemy method was really crappy. Yi Shiwen was simply a novice who had not started alchemy for a long time, which made everyone inexplicable. He was like a person who owns a top sports car but doesn't even know how to use the steering wheel. They didn't understand how this happened. Unbeknownst to them, Yi Shiwen was actually amateur compared to these alchemy masters. He could completely be regarded as a layman. He could only refine standard grade pellets due to his memorization. Just like a primary school student solving a university question. When someone else lists the solution, he only needs to memorize it, but it only pertains to a particular problem. If it becomes another question, the student will be dumbfounded. After all, that particular student has no foundation. Yi Shiwen was now in this situation. After all, he wasn't a cultivator centered on alchemy. It was impossible for him to devote most of his time and energy to alchemy, so his foundation was not greatly improved so far. It was not anyhow better than in the past. But soon they were shocked again. The speed of Yi Ziwen's progress made them stunned. In a short time, Yi Ziwen's understanding of the pellet recipe caught up with everyone. He soon overtook, leading everyone. While he was cultivating the pellet, he could still give instructions to others on how to perform better. They had to admit the performance just now might have been just Yi Ziwen's prank. They certainly didn't know that Yi Ziwen's rapid progress was actually based entirely on the mysterious space. He had to help him deduce the entire pellet recipe. The alchemy furnace came about a series of noises, and countless spiritual mists emerged from it. Everyone was thrilled. They were not tired during the whole month since they were all cultivators. Even if they didn't sleep for a year, it would not be much of an issue. Not to mention they were surrounded with 100 alchemist masters in addition to witnessing the alchemy technique of alchemy master. How could they be exhausted? All of them felt quite energetic when the pellets were about to be refined. There were even some people who regretted that the process ended up so quickly in the midst of watching the process and fascination. All in all, their gains were not small. When they recalled the truth discussion conference happening later, they somehow reluctantly accepted it. The real gains were still afterward during the truth discussion conference. All alchemists know that this was the most critical time, whether it would succeed or not depending on this. Strange phenomena shrouded them all of a sudden. Among the individual cultivators, 3 violent aura bursted out from the crowd. The 3 seemingly ordinary individual cultivators suddenly rise in revolt with their explosive strength of half-step Great Sage Late. The astonishing strength instantly swept out like 3 hurricanes and went straight towards the Medicine King Cauldron. Are they trying to rob Violet Limitless Chi Pellet? No, they are here to ruin this alchemy. We are in the most critical step. We won't be able to sustain any damage. Boom! With a loud bang, a big hand descended from the sky. The 3 masters who had just appeared with astonishing strength were slammed into mincemeat on the spot. They died before many people managed to see how they looked. Everyone took a chill breath. The abrupt change ended without many people even reacting to it. Someone wanted to disturb the pellet refining process. Everyone had this idea in their mind. Suddenly, more people felt chilled in their hearts. Would they vent their anger on individual cultivators because of such reasons and stop them from participating in the Truth Discussion Conference afterward? This could be a real disaster. Soon a tall figure descended, but he was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had an imposing figure like an iron tower. The man had a grave and stern expression as he glanced coldly at the individual cultivators, as if he was looking at a group of dead people. Chills crept upon the individual cultivator's heart. The three half-step great sage late masters had their life ended with merely his slap. The deterrent brought by the scene was enormous. Many people recognized this man and could not help but draw a cold breath. Isn't this grim Mujinye? See, why would he even appear here? Yeah, isn't he claiming to be a lone wolf, not participating in any sect? Someone couldn't help but say. They said that Mujinye owed a favor to Old King of Medicine King Valley. But now he came here to help and to repay it. Unexpectedly, they even invited Mujinye to help guard the place. This seems to be the reason they are not afraid of us stirring up trouble. At this time, many individual cultivations suddenly understood why the people in Medicine King Valley would invite them and not to be afraid of their trouble. As a matter of fact, the most taboo thing in alchemy is being disturbed by others. Even if it is just one moment, it is easy to make a huge loss. Alchemy is not tolerant of a little negligence. For example, the three half-step great sage masters just now. If they really succeeded, then the violet limitless chi would fail. All efforts would end up in vain. There was such a great character here. No wonder Medicine King Valley was not worried at all. With such a great sage here, it would be impossible to stir up any trouble here unless the other party was also a great sage. What's more, there must be more great sage masters lurking deep in the Medicine King Valley, staring at the outside world. Such an arrangement is foolproof. Yi Shiwen had noticed the movements of the outside world. In fact, when the three half-step great sages made a move, he found out that compared with the other three great sages present, Mujinye was like someone who came out of the sea of blood. These great sages were obviously fed by pellets, plus some luck involved to be able to cross the threshold of great sage. In terms of combat effectiveness, they were actually quite bad. It was the similar reason explaining why Yi Shiwen was able to win the endurance battle with Gongyang Yongfeng, who had stepped into the Great Sage late despite the fact that he was only in half-step Great Sage Intermediate. Although stronger cultivation permeated strong fighting power, Gongyang Yongfeng wasn't good at fighting among the Great Sages. But Yi Shiwen was so keen. Ever since the beginning, his cultivation path was powered by battles. It was not an exaggeration to say that he paved his path with the opponent's blood and corpse. He often cultivated in the wild alone. Therefore, unless it was in the safest state in the Tibetan Star Summit, he always stayed vigilant. When the three people just acted rowdy and started cursing, Yi Shiwen was already well prepared. When he was about to make a move, Mujinye appeared. For him, there was no need to concentrate and avoid distractions. He already achieved the feat of close cultivation breakthroughs while fighting. There was nothing else worthy to challenge him. Moreover, with the mysterious space, he was already used to multitasking. However, since the danger was resolved, Yi Shiwen no longer paid attention to it. He was determined to acquire this violet limitless chi pellet. As he was injecting his alchemy flame, he was plotting for it secretly. If there was no violet limitless chi pellet, then the time needed and the difficulty to break through the great sage would be hundredfold or even thousandsfold. If it was a peaceful time, he could take the time to wait. He would break into the great sage sooner or later. He had no doubt about this, but did he have time now? No. The current situation was becoming tenser and tenser, which was the fundamental reason why he had to break through in a short time. Only after breaking through to the great sage could he be considered to have the power to fend himself. With a muffled sound, the entire alchemy furnace began to boil. Countless spiritual mists in addition to medicine scents spread out. A violet pellet flew up with hints of spiritual wisdom imprinted on it. The pellet, wanted to fly away in the sky. If it really succeeded, it would have the opportunity to develop his spiritual mind and become a cultivator. It was born with extraordinary roots with great potential to succeed in the future. However, Yao Buping quickly summoned a big gasified hand and put this pellet into a jade box. Everyone was relieved that the process finally finished. All of their gazes were also fixed on that jade box. Helping people to break through from Sage Realm to Great Sage's pellets was also the ultimate goal of their efforts. They could help but envy since that was the only thing they could do. Under the gaze of two great sages, Yao Buping and Mu Jingye, nobody would like to take the risk to fight for it. Oh! A huge horn blared, traversing the void from the universe and reaching everyone's ears. Chapter 684. Chapter 684. Bloodwolf plunderers attacked. The unknown horn sound penetrated the void from the universe and reached everyone's ears. The sound of the horns sounded like the rebirth of ancient evil deities. The ground was shaking. Even if they were in the Medicine King Valley, they still felt this terrible earthquake. A powerful aura was projected from the universe, as if they were laughing at them and scrupulously. Everyone was shocked. It was the Horn of War. The horn sounded only when two big forces collided. Yi Shiwen condensed qi in his eyes and gazed into the celestial. Corpses of Medicine King Valley disciple dropped from the celestial, burning in the atmosphere. The outlook of it seemed like meteorites slipped from the celestial and fell to the great earth. It resembled the Doomsday Ragnarok. Everyone was frightened by such a doomsday scene in front of them. What's going on? Is there any terrifying attack on Medicine King Valley? How can this happen? Medicine King Valley is not as big as Meteor's sect, but it can be regarded as a first-class force. There are also a few great sages in the sections. How can the general forces dare to provoke Medicine King Valley? Even though Medicine King Valley is not very good at fighting, ordinary people could not afford to offend them. Which force actually has such great courage to attack Medicine King Valley? Some people with flexible minds could relate this scene to Violet Limitless Chi Pellet. There was no movement at all, but now the scene suddenly appeared. But before they continued to ponder further, a huge blood aura came crushing downward from a distance. Apparently, it originated from the universe. Everyone gazed at that blood aura. It took the shape of Bloodwolf with domineering auras surged every corner in the scene. Someone responded immediately. Bloodwolf Plunderer. When he screamed, everyone took a cold breath with their bodies trembling. Chills crept upon their heart. Bloodwolf Plunderer was a taboo in the nearby star region. No one knew when Bloodwolf Plunderer emerged in the starry sky. They said that Bloodwolf Plunderer had more than 100,000 members. Among them, there were countless sage realm masters. There were quite a number of great sages too. Bloodwolf Plunderer dared not to mess with behemoths like Meteor's sect. However, other sects would meet their end if they encountered Bloodwolf Plunderer. Moreover, occurrence of mass murdering in sects happened many times in the past despite the entire force of those sects added up to hundred thousands of people. All of them were slaughtered. Dead and silence reigned the entire planet in the end. The faction station's planetary spirits were all siphoned out. It eventually turned into a Death Star. The cruel means was unimaginable. And most importantly, they didn't keep anyone alive at all. Those who encountered them had no good ending. In the nearby faction of the Starry Sky, there were several joint operations against the Bloodwolf Plunderer, but every time they had no way to cause a fatal threat to the Bloodwolf Plunderer. Afterwards, there was a crazy revenge of the Bloodwolves. Some sects were exterminated, and finally Meteor's sect was disturbed. However, the Bloodwolf Plunderer escaped in the end and hid themselves into a chaotic star. That place was chaotic that spiritual senses could not permeate through it. Except the Bloodwolf Plunderer, the outsiders had no way to survive in it, even Meteor's sect as well. They could be regarded as horrifying existence that even stopped children's weeping aloud. Unexpectedly, the crowd now encountered them. Bloodwolf Plunderer launched their attack at Medicine King Valley. Never mind those individual cultivators. Even those of Medicine King Valley Disciple had ugly faces. In the distant celestial, there were dense figures everywhere, painting a blood-red formation. All these blood wolf plunderers were riding on blood wolves. The scene was terrifying and violent. With their strength to patrol the starry sky for so many years without being destroyed, their power was indeed extraordinary. These blood wolf plunderers formed into groups with battle roars that trembled the sky. There was nothing superfluous. They just wanted to paint the entire Medicine King Valley with blood. Many people's faces changed greatly because they found that they couldn't even send out the messenger for help. The whole planet was enclosed by arrays series. Not even the slightest message could slip through. This was also blood wolf plunderers' common means to prevent forces from sending out help-seeking messages to the outside world. Hence, often when many forces were found to be exterminated, it was already a long time ago. The blood wolf plunderer had long escaped into the starry sky. Kill them all. Defend Medicine King Valley. Yao Booping shouted loudly, and there were many roars of Medicine King Valley disciple around him. Many figures also rose up in the Medicine King Valley. There were people shouting in addition to the sound of horses. In this sudden battle, the Medicine King Valley disciple chose to fight till dead. Kill. Kill the blood wolf plunderer bastards. Not only the Medicine King Valley disciple, but even many people among those individual cultivators echoed and roared. The morale was great with battle roars surging to the sky. It was not that they really had such a high consciousness, nor they had a deep hatred with blood wolf plunderer which led to the death match. The fundamental reason was that they wanted to protect themselves. Everyone knew that blood wolf plunderers had great strength and carried bloody deeds. Wherever they go, they would not allow any survivors. Hence, the individual cultivators had no choice. If they failed to repel blood wolf plunderer, only death awaited them. So this time, no matter whether they were harboring ill intention or any other ideas, they had to be united when facing the blood wolf plunderer. It is a death match. We have no way out. Everyone knows the blood wolf plunderers means. No matter whether we are willing or not, bloodsheds are bound to happen. If we don't join the death match, we will be executed. Someone shouted, inspiring countless warriors. With the situation developed into this stage, there was no space for hesitation. If there were other forces, there could be space for negotiation. After all, they were individual cultivators who had little to do with Medicine King Valley. Unless the opponent wanted to offend all of the individual cultivators and the connection behind them, they would not be too overboard. After all, these individual cultivators seem inconspicuous. One or two of them did not really amount much. However, big numbers win the game. When they were grouped up, it would be a terrifying force that no one could ignore. However, having merciless blood wolf plunderer as their opponent, there was no room for maneuver. There were still many people who were depressed. If they knew it, they wouldn't come. Who knew they would encounter an attack by blood wolf plunderer. However, at this time, they didn't have time to think more about it. Numerous disciplines in the Medicine King Valley flew out with battle intentions surging to the sky. They had to defend their homeland. Most importantly, they had to fight till death and defeat the blood wolf plunderer to survive. These blood wolf plunderers are going to kill us. Even if we die, we have to drag them along to hell. Slain them. Let this be a one-way trip for these bastards. Kill them all. Don't let anyone flee. Medicine King Valley's disciples' morale elevated to the sky. Some even roared with iron, to pursue blood wolf plunderer to their home base and exterminate them. However, everyone knew that this would probably be impossible. After all, if blood wolf plunderer were easily exterminated, then they would not live to this day. A series of war horns sounded. Arrays activated in series in the Medicine King Valley, covering the main base of the entire Medicine King Valley. See, with the sound of tearing, there was a crack. It was seemingly a space torn apart from the middle. The scene was just like how a beautiful painting got torn apart. A bloody spear was shot down from the celestial. This bloody spear, which was hundreds of feet long, was like a pillar that supported heaven. It swooshed down to the scene. Boom! The entire mountain gate array shook wildly. Even the entire main array was a little disturbed, not to mention those sub-arrays. Wherever the spear passed, countless arrays were punctured in a flash. Those disciples hid in the arrays thought it was safe, but they were annihilated under this spear. Each swoosh could annihilate hundreds of disciplines. Who dares to attack Medicine King Valley? Yao Booping finally moved. With a shrill shriek due to airflow, he appeared in the celestial. A gasified big hand reached out to the crack, demonstrating the strength of a terrifying master of great sage late fully. Boom! That space seemed to collapse in an instant. Chaos funneled out onto the Blood Wolf Plunderer's masses. In that moment, what was grasped by that big hand turned into a blood mist. Medicine King Valley, Yao Booping, you are quite worthy. Amidst the chaos, collapsed airspace and a tall blood figure appeared from the ranks of Blood Wolf Plunderer with sinister laughs. It was a tall man about 30 years old with a menacing face and fierce expression. He was equipped with bloody armor, sitting on a huge blood wolf taller than 7 meters. Its bloody eyes and 4 claws that cracked the spaces were extremely terrifying. The head of Blood Wolf Plunder, Blood Lord. Yao Booping stared at the man coldly and said a name that made countless people tremble. Blood Lord. This name terrified everyone in this starry sky. Those who mentioned the frightening name also quivered in fear. My Medicine King Valley has no injustice with you Blood Wolf Plunderers. Why attack Medicine King Valley? For no reason. Yao Booping gritted his teeth and uttered his doubt. Yeah, why did you come to attack us? A Medicine King Valley disciple roared. Indeed, although they were prepared for a desperate battle, they were also quite baffled. Why would they be under attack? Both sides mind their own business. Why would the Blood Wolf Plunder organize such a great skirmish on them? Blood Lord sneered. Does the Blood Wolf Plunderer need a reason? Do we need to tell you why? But if you are willing to surrender collectively for our Blood Wolf Plunder alchemy, this uncle can let you go. However, we will only accept half of them. So if you want to survive, you exchange other people's heads for it. Ha ha! Chapter 685. Chapter 685. Collapse of the defense. Hearing Blood Lord's words made everyone's hair stand on end. With just a few words, this Blood Lord wanted everyone to go to the extent of killing each other. Who would not want to survive? This was especially true for those warriors who had cultivated hard to reach this level. TSK, TSK. Just this sentence alone made them distrust each other. The name of Blood Lord is not in vain indeed. Yimo said astoundingly, appearing on Yi Zaiwen's right shoulder. Yimo's charming appearance looked so cute that no one would believe that he was an unparalleled demon. He's a good young talent to be a demon. If he gets proper training in demon domain, he can probably be a great demon. Ha! Yi Shiwen nodded. This Blood Lord was a manipulator. A seemingly rampant remark actually made the entire Medicine King Valley fall into silence. No wonder the Blood Wolf Plunderer could survive tenaciously among the siege of many forces. The leader was really extraordinary. This is a good opportunity indeed. The more chaotic the situation, the greater your chance of getting the violet limitless chi pellet in the end. Don't believe his words. Are there any survivors wherever Blood Wolf Plunderer went? He just wanted to instigate us to kill each other, yelled Yao Booping. Everyone nodded their heads, but the incident just now went deep into their hearts. Who wouldn't want to live if they could? Kill them. Kill these damned Blood Wolf Plunderer. They will never let us go. We can only fight to death and chase them out in order to survive. At this time, Tian Butong's roar attracted everyone's heart back. Everyone was attracted by the possible chance of survival just now. As they thought through it, they realized what Tian Butong said was right. There were no survivors wherever the Blood Wolf Plunderer passed. It was simply impossible. What a pity. I really wanted to give you all a chance. Our Blood Wolf Plunderer is also lacking alchemy masters. But since you can't tell the good from the bad, then all of you should go to hell. Blood Lord showed a regretful face before roaring ferociously. Of course, Medicine King Valley's disciples were not going to wait helplessly for death. One after another, ancient arrays buried deep in the planet were revived and activated. If it was not for the protection of these arrays, the entire planet would be exploded by this terrible collision. "Blast them!" Someone from Blood Wolf Plunderer screamed, and his sound came through the entire void. All of a sudden, the entire sky was densely packed with long arrows spewing out like a layer of blood-colored cloud, and instantly fell down. Poof! 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 Each blood arrow broke through the defensive arrays, and it fell like raindrops. Every blood arrow could blast a hill. The power was really unbelievably scary. Ah! 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 The Medicine King Valley disciples were shrieking miserably. It was a bloodbath with lives getting butchered one after another. "We have to fight back," roared Yao Booping. The whole mountain gate began to shake violently. A series of massive forces surged in it, and a series of spiritual veins swam in it. It turned into a divine light, which was as thick as a water tank through the arrays and shot out. Boom! 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 Wherever the divine light passed, countless Blood Wolf Plunder warriors and Blood Wolf riders were bombed to death, leaving no residues behind. This was a confrontation between two terrifying forces, and no one was spared. Countless attacks burst like raindrops from the sky at every moment. The aftermath of the battle shook thousands of miles away. The Blood Wolf Plunderer was very well prepared this time. They had exterminated numerous sects and gained experience. So they also had various martial instruments that shone with unimaginable brightness. The sky was densely packed with the Blood Wolf Plunderer's battle cry. There were at least more than hundreds of thousands of soldiers covering the entire sky. Numerous Medicine King Valley disciples were slightly dumbfounded to witness this scene. So many Blood Wolf Plunderer. It is really scary. How come there are so many Blood Wolf Plunderer? Could it be that all Blood Wolf Plunderers sally forth in full strength to attack us this time? There were some Medicine King Valley disciples who were screaming miserably and roaring furiously. Within Yi Zaiwen's vision, he saw a blood flower spattered. A Medicine King Valley disciple was pierced through the air by a huge blood arrow, and the blood blossomed into a splendid blood flower. The person was nailed to death on a mountaintop. In the blink of an eye, Blood Wolf Plunderer's warriors actually pushed their front line just before them with their battle. Cries shrouded every direction in the scene. Medicine King Valley's side was unwilling to be inferior too. The divine lights were continually shot out, and it was unusually spectacular. This battle caught Medicine King Valley off guard. There were many things that were not prepared. As time passed, the arrays were constantly revived and joined the battle every minute and every second. Within a short period of time, Medicine King Valley gradually had the upper hand. After all, this place was their sect. They stood the geographic advantage and had many favorable conditions that Blood Wolf Plunderer did not have. Both sides were totally immersed in the battle at this time. Within just a few minutes, thousands of masters from both sides had died in the battle. It could be said that there were countless deaths and injuries, but most of them were Medicine King Valley's defenders. Although Medicine King Valley's strength was quite good, how could it be comparable to Blood Wolf Plunderer, who turned out in full strength? They were the real, horrifying masters who massacred countless people to the point of the blood dyeing their clothes red. This was also the origin of their name, Blood Wolf Plunderer. Dang! 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 A series of loud bell sounds rang through the entire Medicine King Valley station, waking up more masters in close cultivation. Numerous mighty aura gushed out of the close cultivation, and various martial instruments, as well as divine soldiers, skimmed over the sky, killing the Blood Wolf Plunderer. Kill! Suddenly, a kill sound thundered in the air. A real bloody battle was about to begin. One party intended to exterminate the entire sect and killed with total disregard for life. The other party had no choice but to fight desperately for a chance of survival. Hundreds of thousands of Blood Wolf Plunderer cavalries held control over the entire station firmly, that even a fly couldn't fly out. Roar! The Blood Wolf that Blood Lord sat on finally made a move. A terrifying and furious roar turned into a series of shock waves blasting out, instantly shattering countless arrays. This was also a great sage-level Blood Wolf, and it was absolutely daunting. Countless spiritual energy began to gather in frenzy. The blood wolf opened its big mouth and absorbed countless spiritual energy. In an instant, a dazzling beam of light was launched downward. The sky seemed to darken all at once. It was as though night had fallen, and it was pitch black. The space was all shattered. The whole mountain gate was shaking violently, and the mountains collapsed. Numerous Medicine King Valley disciples shrieked in horror and were killed in the collapse. After all, it was a true great sage attacking. So the attacks from the average sage realm and legend could not rival it at all. The entire mountain protective array was blasted open. Blood Lord took the lead and rushed in by himself first. Kill them all? Blood Wolf Plunder followed and charged in succession. It was an astonishing sight, like 10,000 stampeding horses. The entire mountain protective array was breached in an instant. The Blood Wolf Plunderer was too strong. At this time, all the masters finally understood why the Blood Wolf Plunderer was so famous and could exterminate countless sections. Such a powerful strength could exterminate a major sect indeed, as long as they did not provoke the presiding super elite characters like those Transcendent Masters. Otherwise, no one could probably stop them in the entire universe. The entire mountain protective array disintegrated all at once, and countless of the disciples holding up the mountain protective array were shocked to death on the spot. Yao Booping was pop-eyed. After a loud roar, he rushed out directly and turned into a stream of light bolting out. The horrifying aura of the great sage swept out. Many Blood Wolf Plunder Masters were directly swept and turned into a cluster of blood mist on the spot. Although Yao Booping was not as strong as Blood Lord, the extent of his strength was unimaginable. A great sage late strength was no joke. No one has ever dared to attack us at Medicine King Valley. Damn Blood Wolf Plunderer, I want you to pay the price. Yao Booping screamed and slammed into Blood Lord. The two mighty masters were like two structures crashing together in the universe. The staggering power annihilated the atoms in an instant, setting off an overpowering wind in a frenzy spree which rippled waves after waves. A scary mushroom cloud rose suddenly. The dazzling light blinded the lights of countless people. In this terrifying collision, Yao Booping was thrusted backward thousands of feet continuously. When he managed to stop, he looked at Blood Lord wearily. At this time, Blood Lord's horrifying aura also constantly climbed up to the peak bit by bit. Compared with Yao Booping's great sage late strength, Blood Lord was stronger. He was actually a great sage minor mastery. Seeing that even Yao Booping was in an inferior position in the face of Blood Lord, everyone was utterly dispirited. Even the most powerful person among them. Yao Booping was more inferior than Blood Lord, not to mention them. Everyone, let's attack together. If we can't kill this damned Blood Lord, no one can walk out alive today. Tian Butong yelled and charged towards Blood Lord too. Everyone present had a solemn expression. They knew that if they could not kill Blood Lord, then none of them would be able to escape. If they killed Blood Lord, then other Blood Wolf Plunderer would be of no concern. Hundreds of thousands of Blood Wolf Plunderers were a lot indeed. Even great sages would be frightened to see this scene, but the number of Medicine King Valley disciples was not less than this as well. The other two great sages, Qing Xuanzi and Mu Jie, also nodded their heads and agreed with this view. Based on their personal strength, each of them was far weaker than Blood Lord, who was a great sage minor mastery. They could only go all out and fight by outnumbering them to see if they could defeat Blood Lord. At this time, everyone was ashen-faced and prepared for a final battle. Only Yi Zaiwen's face looked normal at this time. He was the calmest among all others. Even if it was in the face of hundreds of thousands of Blood Wolf Plunderer, his facial expression was the same. 1. It means a person is very frightened or shocked. Chapter 686. Chapter 686, he is going to make a breakthrough. It was not that he could annihilate these hundreds of thousands of Blood Wolf Plunderer with only his strength. Even with his strength, it was impossible to achieve such a level. This possibility was only limited to the masters of the transcendent realm. However, despite his inability to annihilate these hundreds of thousands of blood wolf plunderer, at least he was able to escape. Not even the temple master of the Soul Destruction Temple was able to hold him. He never thought that the warriors of the hundreds of thousands of blood wolf plunder would be even more frightening than the temple master of the Soul Destruction Temple. In any case, he was confident of his ability to escape. Of course, there was nothing for him to be nervous about. Do you team up with many people to gang up on one person? When did you, the self-proclaimed member of the prestigious and upright family, learn to do something like that? A brash voice roared from the sky, and another boisterous voice gushed out. It turned out to be the Honorable Great Sage, with a vigorous aura, seemingly not from beneath Yao Booping. However, he had the appearance of a young man in his 20s while wearing a blood-red robe. His bloody red long hair, swaying in the wind, appearing ostentatiously in front of everyone. His hand was holding a long sword with blood on it. It was unknown as to how many people were slaughtered by this sword. Suddenly, there were changes in the facial expressions of the people simultaneously. It was already hard for them to hold off against the Blood Lord. What's more, there was a top expert who was no less superior than Yao Booping. Together, these two people could exterminate them. Many people even wailed in anguish in their hearts that their chance of survival was gone with these two people here. Some people had even recognized this young man. He was no ordinary citizen, but the Blood Hangman, the second in charge of the Blood Wolf Plunderer. Compared to the Blood Lord, whose reputation preceded him, the Blood Hangman had also made a name for himself. Furthermore, he was notoriously famous for torturing his opponents sadistically. Compared to the Blood Lord, he was much worse. Let me handle this person. You guys deal with the Blood Lord. At this moment, a distinct yet cold voice suddenly came out. Everyone turned their head and looked around. However, who they saw was Yi Shiwen, who had arrived behind their back when they were not looking. Many people were a little dumbfounded. At this moment, not even the arrival of the Great Sage can resolve the situation. Would it not be whimsical for a half-step Great Sage like him to be able to defeat the notoriously violent yet outstanding Blood Hangman? That was not a competition of power. The Blood Hangman of the late Great Sage could even kill the half-step Great Sage, Yi Shiwen, with just one finger. However, unlike other people, there were expressions of slight joy on both Yao Booping and Tian Butong's face. Unlike others, they had both witnessed how the Gongyang Yongfeng of the late Great Sage was exhausted to death by Yi Shiwen with their own eyes. In other words, even if he did not possess the capability to defeat a Great Sage late warrior, he definitely had the power to stall the Great Sage late warrior. For the Medicine King Valley, which was now in a dire state, it was already difficult for them to deal with the Blood Lord. Moreover, they still were up against the Blood Hangman, who was equally strong. If no one could stall the Blood Hangman, then what awaited them would be a lopsided massacre with simply no chance of retaliation at all. In the Blood Wolf Plunderer, there were not many Great Sage. However, when it came to competition between these experts, the quantity was not what enabled them to win. When the four Great Sages on their side were up against the Blood Lord, the possibility of victory was none to nil. However, as the event had developed to this stage, they could only go all out at the risk of their lives just for the sake of survival. Also, at this moment, some people volunteered to stall the Blood Hangman. Of course, this was the best idea. It was best to stall the Blood Hangman for as long as possible. If the stall was prolonged until they managed to kill the Blood Lord, then this crisis in Medicine King Valley would be truly resolved. Just you. The Blood Hangman tilted his head and looked at Yi Shiwen. There was an unimaginably wicked smile on his face. It seems that I have withdrawn from worldly affairs for too long. Did anyone forget my feats? As he was talking, the Blood Hangman started to make a move. His figure leaped to the vast sky and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen in an instant. He raised his sword and struck it, unleashing monstrous blood waves. The long sword had already reached in front of Yi Shiwen. When Yi Shiwen was about to be sliced into half by the sword, Yi Shiwen moved and raised his hand, turning his entire arm into a sword, and deflected the attack. Invincible sword! He let out a scream, accompanied by a burst of engulfing and raising golden deities that knock against the monstrous blood waves violently. Boom! This collision had instantly caused a big crack on the void, with the point of collision being the center of the crack. Like a spider web, the crack spread through the void in all directions. In the endless cyclone, Yi Zaiwen's figure had retreated 10 feet from it before he landed on his feet. During the previous collision, there was already a clear distinction. It was obvious that Yi Shiwen still had room for improvement in cultivating his skills. However, even so, his current ability was sufficient to surprise everyone in Medicine King Valley. At first, they did not even think that Yi Shiwen, who was a half-step great sage, could actually stop the Blood Hangman. After all, the Blood Hangman was the ferocious great sage, late expert. Yao Buping did not even dare to announce that he was able to defeat this frightening opponent even if he encountered him. Everyone had finally come to an understanding as to why Yao Buping would make Yi Shiwen take the lead at this moment. It was not Yao Buping who made a mistake. Yi Shiwen did have such strength. Not only did he have a different kind of alchemy flame, but he did have the strength that was on an equal level to the great sage. Although they were all astonished as to how a half-step great sage could possess such a terrible strength that was equally matched to the great sage, they did not have the time to continue thinking about it. Of course, they would have hoped that Yi Zaiwen's strength would become stronger and better. On the other side, the face of the Blood Hangman, who was just fooling around, became solemn. At first, it seemed that he was just fooling around with an ant and not taking Yi Shiwen seriously at all. He is just a half-step great sage. In his mind, it was not any different from the ants, but unexpectedly, this ant had given him a different surprise. This was not an ordinary ant. There was something extraordinary about it, which in turn sparked his interest. However, his interest in it was merely just a thought. As for the upcoming battle, it was something that did not come up in his mind. The previous blow had made him realize that the ant in front of his eyes was unexpectedly powerful, but there was still a huge gap between the ant when compared to him, who was already in the stage of the great sage late. After showing interest, there was a merciless expression on his face. His favorite thing to do was to extort his prey into desperate straits and then witness their expression of desperation, just like the Medicine King Valley in its current situation. However, to his surprise, Yi Shiwen, who fell into a disadvantageous position, continued to unleash attacks towards him directly as opposed to remaining in his position. It was almost immediately after he was being repelled. He was already prepared to launch an attack. His unwavering attack was impressive. Interesting. Let me see what is different about this ant then. Ha-ha! The Blood Hangman laughed, rushed towards Yi Shiwen, and had an intense battle with him in a different location. Both sides collided continuously in the void. Wherever they went, everything was crushed into fragments, whether it was the Medicine King Valley's disciples or the Blood Wolf Plunderer's warriors. The hand-to-hand combat of both sides was like collisions of two huge stars in the sky. The terrible shockwaves produced from the violent collisions made everybody give up hope for the moment. In the void, Yi Shiwen was repeatedly beaten into retreat, but he recklessly charged towards the Blood Hangman. He was expelled back numerous times until he vomited blood. However, in the blink of an eye, he was fighting with the Blood Hangman as if nothing had happened to him. Countless disciples of the Medicine King Valley admired him. Regardless of their past perspectives of Yi Shiwen, they could not help but admire Yi Shiwen. If it were them doing so, they definitely could not do it. They could see that Yi Zaiwen's strength was obviously no match for the Blood Hangman, but he still charged towards the Blood Hangman numerous times. This was not something any ordinary people could do. Many people witnessed Yi Zaiwen's combat skills. They could not help but felt thrilled by it. Master Long was fighting the Great Sage with the strength of half-step Great Sage. How could they let him down? Especially Tian Butong, Yao Buping, and a few other people who rushed straight towards the Blood Lord. Compared to the Blood Hangman, the Blood Lord who strode over the Great Sage and young Master was more like a mountain lying in front of them. It was literally impossible to cross over, which made people despair, but they still had to cross over. With the destruction of the entire protection array, Countless blood wolf plunderers fell from the sky, spreading the fire of war throughout the entire Medicine King Valley. Battle cries were heard everywhere. The disciples of the Medicine King Valley and the disciple of the Blood Wolves were fighting against each other in a group. The Blood Wolves plunderers wanted to destroy the entire Medicine King Valley, while the disciples of the Medicine King Valley were fighting for their survival. Both sides fought desperately with their opponents and did not leave any leeway. In the sky, the fights happening on both battlefields were the most vicious. On one side was the battle with Blood Lord against Yao Buping, Tian Budong, and the others, while on the other side was the battle between Yi Shiwen and the Blood Hangman. Although the battle between both of them could not be regarded as evenly matched, both sides were in a state of stalemate in terms of fight status. The battle soon transversed to the Celestial. The huge troops that were deployed by the Blood Wolf Plunderer were turned into dust from the shockwave created in the fight between both of them. The troops were unable to stop the shockwave from the fight at the Sage level. Soon, the Blood Hangman had discovered an important point, which was no matter how he attacked and beat up Yi Shiwen, even till Yi Shiwen vomited blood, Yi Shiwen was able to retaliate immediately as if there was nothing wrong with him. It was like an unyielding cockroach, which made people feel uncomfortable and disgusted. No matter how it was hit badly, it was still fine. However, the Blood Hangman had thought of the reason in an instant. Could it be that this person had martial techniques that heal his wounds? Thinking of this, his eyes suddenly lit up because as he was living a life where he was constantly at war with others, protecting his life became important to him. If he was able to acquire such a powerful martial technique to heal himself, the safety of his own life would be indefinitely secured. Kid, as long as you surrender your Bodis healing technique, I will spare your life and take you in as my slave. Blood Hangman roared. Do you get to decide? In the midst of Yi Shiwen being expelled back, his eyes did not flinch, not even the slightest. He was even more determined to fight. With a rise in his Bodis aura, he was about to make a breakthrough. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.